count my achievements, have to look up in the rafters for banners. Less of a dying breed, blame it on my ancestors. 2 sets ahead, I'm playing chess while you playing checkers.
Okay, so welcome everyone to episode 1 or 2, depending if I post the first one, which I probably won't, so we'll call this episode 1. I have here my dad, aka the Karl, known in the cyber field. Yeah, so I guess we'll just start with maybe an introduction to who you are, why people care, and how you got started in cyber.
Okay, cool, man. Hey, great show. What is it called? Broadcast? What's it called?
No, we're going with Ctrl-alt-decrypt because someone already took broadcast.
Oh, okay. Well, both are good.
Yeah.
Yeah. The why do people care part? I'm still trying to figure that out, but I just keep being myself, and I look for a reaction. I think I'm more like a stand-up comedian than a cyber guy.
That's the imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that, but yeah, I just want a reaction. What I can't stand is no reaction. So, yeah, but about me, I guess, like, and why am I in cyber? I
start from the beginning, schooling all the way through your career progression.
Why don't I do it this way? 0 to 20, Queen's Engineering. You know, raised in Ottawa. My parents both went to Queen's Engineering, so that's where I went. I think I broke the cycle with you.
Well, I broke the cycle.
Yeah, that's true. And then 20 to 40, Nortel. So imitated my dad again in that respect.
And what is Nortel?
Sorry, Nortel is a telecommunications company. Canada was a part of Northern Electric, and Bell made a research kind of arm and they both funded it. My dad was one of the original 25 people, so that's why we come from Kingston through Belleville to Ottawa. And by the time I get there, it's selling first digital switches mostly in North America.
How big did Nortel get? Like, not just Ottawa wide, but Canada wide. How big was it in comparison to the other telco?
I want to say we had 200,000 employees. Like, you have a lot of people, like installers and stuff like that in Northern Electric that are doing, setting up equipment and maintaining it. But I might be off on those numbers. I want to say up to 200,000 people. Let me check that.
Like, how big was it considered in Canada? Was it like the Bell of now?
Yeah.
Like, size-wise, not just employee-wise, but I mean, like, in terms of
yeah, it was the number one. Like, when it hit its peak, it was the number one stock on the Toronto Stock Exchange.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, okay.
And so it all comes crashing down around 2000. I turned 40.
What were you doing in Nortel?
Yeah. So I was one of. This is why I think I might be off on my numbers. I was a manager. So maybe it's more like 10,000 people, and I'm like one of a first line of management moving into the middle management. So I would have been called I went through engineering, and then I got into what would now be called hacking or DevOps. So I wasn't like a great designer for some reason. Everyone, that's what you chase, and you become architect, whatever. I did really well in testing, and I ran the labs. I did a lot of facilities work. I did all kind of these odd jobs that were setting up where everyone else is coding and doing software. I'm the guy assembling it all in a lab and making sure it works, and then dealing with shipping it, and so delivery, and starting to build what are called tools. So DevOps tools started to be my shtick, and I had 3 or 4 people that were super creative and doing what would now be, well, they got some patents around it, but it was all pre-DevOps, Jenkins, GitHub.
Yeah, like, what are you, like, put in context for people who don't really know what was going on at the time? What are you creating the advancement of in technology? What existed at the time, and what are you helping progress?
Well put. So I was on the first 1-800 digital switch in North America. So that's 1-800 allows you to move calls between like long distance, basically. 1-900 is now those tech services. So it's like you could build your own service with 1-800, 900, 1-800. And that was the first soft switches. So we now would call VoIP and things like that. We were a precursor to that. 1-800 was the backbone of it. So you'd have...
And VoIP is voice over IP.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I always assuming people know the acronyms.
Right.
But before all of that, you had to build things like common channel signaling, where you've got the voice going down one channel and all the management going down another channel, and you're using either frequency or time division multiplexing. I think both. And you're getting into fiber networks, like the research around making fiber have enough of an efficiency to be better than copper.
And what's the state of the internet at that point? What are you capable of doing? What are people like? Where are we at this stage?
So it's, I come out of school in like 83. I think the internet's starting to crop up in 93, 94.
So you're in Nortel pre-internet.
Correct.
Really becoming commercialized.
Yeah.
And sorry, just your degree in Queens was computer engineering.
Electrical engineering. Computer engineering didn't exist.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
It actually shows up when I'm halfway in there, and we're doing punch cards and.
So do you take courses on quote unquote computer engineering halfway through, or does it stay electrical all the way?
I stayed electrical all the way. I thought computers were for nerds.
You didn't consider yourself a nerd at that point?
No, I was pretty cool. I was more into sports, and well, there's a time and a place for everything, and for me that was university. I didn't get away to school. I was 17 and I worked for a year. So I was trying to play catch up on my social skills. However, you're right, there was a computer elective you could take in electrical, which I didn't take, and then there was a hardcore, more like power engineering, how to build transformers, and working for Ontario Hydro. That was kind of the big place to work if you're an electrical engineer.
And so is that like that was the next question I was going to ask? Is that where a lot of the students that you went to school with, is that what they would go out and do? Like, where were the electrical engineers going to? Were you like first of a breed of people going into sort of the computer area, or were a lot of them at the time going, okay, this is the next big thing?
Yeah, I think, boy, that's interesting, because computers were around when I was in high school, but it was doing computational math.
Right.
And it wasn't, I have to admit, I was not too clued into corporations and what they're doing, or even caring. And Nortel, like when I get out, just starts having corporate email like 2 years later, like mid 80s. All of a sudden there's this thing called Cocos, and you don't have to send memos to people. And so I'm one of these people that come out, and
how would you send memos at the time?
You'd have a typist, like every so.
But what channel would they go through? What are you sending them on?
Yeah, you're not like that's the hilarious part. Everyone had an EA, and the EA would like get this.
Like, how are you passing messages along through fax?
Yeah. So
you're writing memos in your fax,
but 90% of it's you're getting letters. Like people are sending internal mail. There was like 3 shuttle buses between the 3 Nortel locations sending mail back and forth, internal mail, right? And so if you wanted a PO signed, you'd put it in the mail, or you'd walk it over. Like I was doing a lot of running around getting things signed. Yeah. And so all of a sudden Cocos came in, and at least 50% of the managers never used it. They had their EA print them out.
It's funny you say that, because there's a lot of millennials now that there's a thing that they say, well, this could have been an email. I didn't need to be in this video call. Imagine if you had to go bring your letter over. I don't think you would have wanted to send in a mail.
It was weird, because I started jumping on it and doing, like, imagine I was a project manager, like we're in facilities, and I would do all my status reports on email and just blast it out. And I'd have meetings, and people would go like,
keep your mic a little closer.
Yeah, people would go like, where's the last week's thing? And I'd print out copies, and they go, yeah, but you need to get them to me sooner. And I go like, there's this email, this Cocos thing I sent all of you.
And Cocos is what is it? The server? It's the name of the brand.
The code name, yeah, corporate communications service.
Do you know who brought that to light? Like, what company is running this?
It was internal. It was internal tools.
It was a Nortel.
Yeah. So Nortel made huge investments in internal tools. They built their own like GitHub. They built I don't know what that's, a source code repository and load build and all the terms you would find in DevOps, except maybe the concept of containers. They built it internally, and probably one of the biggest software systems in the world, or at least in North America.
Okay. FYI, I checked on the size of Nortel. It was 25,000 in Canada, 100,000 worldwide.
Okay. So it wasn't crazy. The 200,000 was, missed by it too.
So is it being thought of inside of Nortel that like things like this internal email, is this like we're going to revolutionize this and we're going to push this out? Or was it just we're building tools to talk to each other that nobody cares? It
was the second. That was the weirdest thing. So I would have been, to your point, all these tools were considered like corporate IT. So building huge health check, what do you call it, network performance, you needed to because of the network. But it was like an internal tool.
So when you guys are having email inside, is this publicly available to anywhere? No. So you guys are just
very insulated.
the first people using email, and nobody else really knows about it.
Yeah. And so
and not thinking it's a big deal.
not thinking it's a big deal, and it's a lot of resistance going, is this really better? But by like I'm young in the workforce at that time. The people like even 10 years older than me just thought it was all goofy.
And what's the concern? What are people going, email, this could be bad?
One, fear of change. Two, when all you millennials talk about like data democracy and stuff, those concepts didn't exist back then.
Like privacy wise.
Yeah. And so what people hated was little punks like me could be a project manager all of a sudden. Where before it was hierarchical, right? I wouldn't have an EA. How would I send a memo? Right. I'd have to go beg I'd have to go ask the boss.
Time with your boss.
Yeah, and go, hey, can I send this? And when you're a project manager, you got a little more power. And when you're in
and where does your dad sit in the hierarchy when you're entering in?
He sits next to me. That a funny story. Two funny stories there. He decided not to be. He became a manager really quick. Back in the day, they were like, he's at the front of the boomers, I'm at the back. By the time I get there, everyone ahead of me is already a manager, and they might only be 5 years older than me. Okay. But it's like a full hierarchy, right? Where when he gets there, there's 25 people, and so basically,
did he have vested stock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. I think he got Bell. Like you can choose between Nortel and Bell, so he just kept getting Bell.
Bell stock.
Yeah. That's all. That's
probably better than Nortel at the end of the
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. He didn't ever invest in Nortel. So he, if you're one of 25 people, he knew he knew Roth. Mm-hmm. Like when Roth came in, he knew all the people who eventually got moved up. And imagine 100,000 people. I mean, there was already Nortel, but imagine 10,000 people where there was 25. All those original 25, if they just showed up for work, at some point they get promoted.
Right.
And so he said he got promoted pretty quick as a manager, and he started doing interviews.
Did he have any care to climb the corporate ladder?
He hated it. Like he realized, he said, as soon as I did job interviews, I realized how terrible I was at it and how much better I was because he's super introvert.
Right.
And he's super sharp kind of physics guy. So he was a tester at the end of his career, but most of his career, I think he was like digital signal processing and an engineer. And he worked a lot in fiber, digital signal processing, but hardcore engineering, a lot of hardware more than software. But I remember him reading my books in the middle of the 80s about this whole, I'd asked him about the computer thing going, why are all your people at work morons? And he went, they're scared. So he just sat there one weekend reading all my engineering books and learning about this stuff. I thought he was nuts, right? Going,
right.
You're not gonna read my books, borrow my textbooks on a weekend and learn this stuff. And by Sunday, he's asking me questions that I didn't understand. And I'm like, oh, I haven't read that part yet, Dad. What are you asking me about, like computers and truth tables? And so he in his mid 40s, he relearns how to do computers and was a tester on a bunch of really nifty little smaller urban versions of it, like basically think of routers and hubs and large networks for the telephone switch.
Yeah.
He was working on DMS1 Urban, and DMS was the corporate name for the big telephone switch. I think it was DMS 100 meant you could that one switch could handle 100,000 subscribers. Obviously not, they couldn't all phone at the same time, but he would work on like smaller versions.
So then you progress your career through Nortel. Nortel starts to collapse around the millennium, like the millennial 2000.
Yeah, all at once. So it's kind of boom and bust. So, internet comes mid 90s. I'm all over it. Like I was running this corporate search engine. My team built in the back end. It was called Boris's Spider, and it would crawl and find everybody's websites that were popping up because everybody wanted to have Netscape, like it's called Mozilla at some point in time. Yeah. They had the browser, and then every first thing you do is you build a web page about your stupid department, and then our crawler would go around and link them all together and became this corporate search engine.
I see. They're using it as a how can I find stuff?
Intranet. Yeah. And so like we ran it until it got replaced, I think, by Alta Vista.
Thing?
Yeah, it's all internal. And
so what are you selling at Nortel at this point?
We're selling telephone switches, man, and having trouble selling software on top of it. Every time we're using software to sell hardware,
mm-hmm.
and the problem is there's more and more software and more capability coming out, and it's costing a lot of money to build it, but people are going, we just want your gear.
So, and you're building all of these cool new tech and only using them to make the business better. You're not trying to sell these
That's a good angle. Yeah.
internet search engines and corporate emails and all this stuff. This is just, we're trying to make business easy.
Yeah. And I like it because I'm in a small group and you can build a tool. A DMS 100, we did like up to 45 batch change releases, like major upgrades, but you have like 3,000 people contributing to it. So you're doing this little feature and you're busting into everybody else's, and you're waiting in line to get your compile submitted just because they don't want you to screw up the major load.
So it's very siloed, all the different.
Yeah.
Do you think anyone at do you ever think back, and do you think people at Nortel ever look back and go, why didn't we start trying to commercialize this shit?
Well, that of the three things, whenever I talk to my buddies about why Nortel collapsed, like two of them were around not understanding how to do finances. Like if your software is making, we had a software control point. It was the database of the 1-800 service, which is routers, like toll calls, long distance calls.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the brain in the processing scheduling brain in Calgary, and the backup one was in, I want to say Fredericton or somewhere in New Brunswick. We're doing all of that, but you only sell two. And then you sell all these, like what you call regional pops. You sell a whole bunch of those, and that business is making a ton of money. And they go, you guys are almost bankrupt. You're not making any money. It's, well, you only need one of ours, but your entire system, we're part of your system. Like, you should be paying us. And they didn't know how to do profit and loss and transfer payments. So every year our budget would be cut to zero, and they didn't know how to fund us. And at the last second, they'd have a sale and they go, they want this capability. We'll pay you money if you'll do this extra capability. And we just barely keep and we were the file system, like the operating system.
Right.
So we didn't know how to do transfers was one. Two, we did a really crappy job of marketing when ISPs came up.
Mm-hmm.
The ISPs bought gear off us, and it was a bit of there was deregulation of the big bell of AT&T that created baby bells that, again, more gear.
Yep.
ISPs, more gear. But the ISPs went, yo, we don't have any money. We get a loan. And loans are big, like GM and other companies would loan you. If you're a good company, they go, buy our gear and we'll loan you the money. Yep, we'll just collect interest off it.
Right.
So they came to Nortel and went, we're an ISP, like we're AOL or whatever. We want to buy tons of gear, but can we loan it off you? Here's the thing. And the head of marketing said, as soon as I did one ISP, every ISP heard about it and went, yo, I want a loan.
Right.
So Nortel had all these sales on the books that were loans. And so, yeah. So sooner or later, right. And when there was a boom and bust, also, exactly. But the third one, back to your point, sorry. The third thing was we did not understand how to do anything outside of telco. So as soon as you came up with all these tools, you go, these are like a search engine is a really good idea, or DevOps is a really good idea, or building our own GitHub is a really good idea. But it's not just internal. We think we could commercialize it. We think the reason we built it was that, like anybody, that, there's no commercial one that serves us. And in our case, it was scale. It wasn't that I built a fancy one for my own garage, but I couldn't sell it to my neighbor.
You just couldn't scale it yet.
Yeah. And so we needed more funding, and guys like me went, I want to spin this out. I see startups coming. You guys in telco don't care about me taking this to the next level.
Because they don't see the benefit of
it.
They don't see it as a nice product.
And if I was running the company, I go, we got focused on telco, man. That's where our sales guys sell. What you're trying to do is create a brand new thing, like Entrust spun out. But
you're the small biz dev guy with your great big idea, but we've got profitability here to worry about.
And in fact, most of the time, like my bosses would go, yo, if I hear you talk about that internet Java crap you're doing one more time, I'm gonna fire you.
Well, because I'm sure his salary was based on the fact that his team was running his product well, and if you're trying to do something else on the side, his team's not churning out what they need to churn, and his numbers don't look good. So you go do your little side project somewhere else.
And so back to my dad, this is so awesome because I kind of went, he's retiring. I'm going, I don't, like, I'm on the other side of management. So what you do is try to become they call them senior managers or C-levels, and then director and MVP. But I mean, I got all these boomers ahead of me, and I'm like 40 and I'm still first level, doing okay. But like I said, I'm one of 1,000 managers. It's like, and people, I'm starting to pay my staff more than me because they're getting poached and things like that. And I think they deserve it. The rest of people that are in management are going, I don't understand why they make more than us. Like, we all got raises because of our seniority in engineering.
Right.
But so funny story is the CIO, like, so think of the top of IT in corporate Nortel. The CIO knows my dad. My dad and him came up together.
Right.
And this guy's already up to CIO, and his son and my son are each other's best men. And he goes, yo, I'm the head.
His son and
we were each other's best men.
Oh, okay.
So we know each other. We're good friends, and we realize our dads know each other. And Dave Curtis.
Okay.
And so Terry Curtis is the CIO, and he went on to do startups. He calls me and goes, yo, like I'm trying to do an internet expert council. Why don't you get you and your smart guy, like you're the manager as a courtesy, and show up, and we've got a guy who's doing an imitation Yahoo, like kind of doing tiles of all the most popular internet sites. The other funny stat, that most search, like this is corporate internet, and it's Nortel nerds, and 80% men, 70%. The top search every day, 5 years in a row was sex.
Yeah.
Only one day.
Simple creatures.
There was one day where it wasn't, and it was the day that Roth announced what he called a right angle turn, like people right near the end. You're trying to get back to this 98, 99. Things are going really well. Boom, bit of a bust. We're going to miss our third quarter report. He sends an email to everyone going like, we're going to do a right angle turn. We got to get into mobile, and but I want to assure everybody that the reports, like the financial reports, are really good. You should keep all your stock. The number one search was careers the next day. Why is he doing that?
So Nortel starts the fall. You get laid off as part of a massive layoffs within Nortel. How many people roughly, like percentage-wise, of the company get laid off at that time?
They did initially a 5%er, and two things happened. Everyone grabbed the talent because, like I said, at the time, other parts of like the government and hospitals had a hard time getting engineers and weren't paying them as much. So they saw Nortel people as really choice.
And started poaching?
Yeah, so the first 5% all got picked up. In fact, like treated like...
And you're part of the first 5%?
No. I missed that. But I saw the writing on the wall, and my dad was talking about his pension, probably not all the way coming through, and it's terminal. Like the older guys were going...
So you know you're not going to get pension because the company's going to fold, and so relying and staying there doesn't make any sense. So you move... Did you get laid off, or did you move first?
I took a package. They were gonna lay me off.
They,
I got a phone call the same day I got divorced. So yeah. So I went, and I'm turning 40, and I went, I already want to spin out. I got these ideas, like you said, that they're not paying attention to, and they asked me if I would take a package, and at the last second they took it back because on a corporate level they said keep people with a lot of experience. Okay. Like I had 40, like get rid of guys that are 50. So they convinced me to come back, and they fire my whole team, and they keep me as a project manager. And I'm not an individual contributor. I was always a team manager kind of guy. So I was kind of pissed. And then I told them, okay, I'm coming back, but the next round, which when it got to 10, 25%, I said, I want out the next round. I've already seen, the other advantage I had was I've already seen the packages, and they're topping things up if they didn't want to get sued and whatever. So people that were 50 or 40 got a top up to go, oh, you're old, you're going to have a hard time finding a job. And it was pretty big, I think, recession by then. And also remember the first wave of Nortel people that got out? Well, they're not usually like your bottom 5%, not so good, right? If you have never done layoffs. And so a lot of people were good in there, but a lot of people weren't so good.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd overhired. We managed to set records in revenue in 97, 98, 99. Roth and Monty won CEO of the year, but they also managed to grow expenses at the same level. So when they're laying people off, they weren't necessarily sending the best people out first. It was pretty random. But by the time they're laying off 25%, the rest of the market can't absorb it. A. B, they've got a bad feeling about Nortel people. They kind of go, these guys aren't that good. They don't know how to deal with, like to your point, we've been using internal tools the whole time. We don't really know how to adjust outside.
So then you kind of mutually decide to leave. They are getting rid of people, and you know the writing's on the wall, so you take a package. Yeah. This is when around 2000 area?
I want to say 2000 start and 2001. Like I got
somewhere in that range.
Yeah, which is code for I got about a year severance.
Okay, and then you go. Where do you spin to from there?
Good point. I decide that I'm doing startups with I'm going to use this money and burn it down and try to do startups before I kind of
startups in.
Yeah, good point. AI. It was called I Am Genie, and it was a virtual concierge. So you're just seeing that.
So explain what a virtual concierge is, especially at that time.
It would kind of pop up, and we were trying to avoid like Bob the Paperclip or some of those early
the Microsoft Paperclip.
Yeah.
Like the assistant.
Yeah. So a personal assistant that pops up with serendipity when you're going on the internet and I was the guy that was coming up with, based on different Myers-Briggs stereotypes, you want to be talked to. Like some people want to order their personal assistant around. Some people want their personal assistant to suggest stuff. Some people want to have a banter with their, how do you feel today? All that to say, we tried to build different models that would pop up when you go on the internet and say, what are you looking for? Knowing a little bit like...
It's super pre-early ChatGPT, right?
100%.
You're hoping that you can ask it questions and it can give you answers based on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and trends. Like Afghanistan became huge, 9/11.
So what you're suggesting, hey, you might want to look at this article, or
yeah, and when Karl pops in, you go, hey, there's more articles on Afghanistan. Last time you were on it, you were searching it for a long time.
Right, you're using
recommendations, and a lot of the stuff you see pretty common in Amazon around books, like Karl, people like you. It was doing coefficient vectors. I'm getting this wrong, but basically, if you know a lot of 40-year-olds in Barrhaven that are men that also like Afghanistan, it can know a lot about you based on other people that are like you. It might, and you can keep correcting it, going, no, I actually don't like World War II.
And so at this point, this is still AI, IT. Cyber's not really even a thought at this point. Cyber doesn't even really, for the most part, exist. I mean, it's around,
but it's like mall cop, right? We all think security guard when you think security.
And just for, I had this conversation the other day of how long AI has been around for, and for some reason, the general populace seems to think it's like 5 years. We're just starting to learn AI, and what you're talking about is early forms of AI, and we're talking 20 plus years ago, right?
Yeah, and purists would go even further back, but
sure,
it was the ability of it, right? And the other part, we assumed that 5G was coming, and when people talk about the dark web, they don't mean cyber, right? They mean empty fiber. So it hit a glut because Nortel had oversold, and so you needed bandwidth. So remember, this is 2001. So you're right, 9/11 happens. So cyber starts to matter. 2, it's not till like 2007, 2008 that the iPhone comes out and seamless, like multimedia kind of seamless apps come out.
Like search on the go type.
Yeah.
And
like you start coming out with these really cool AI things. It's really slow.
Right.
So, but it was there. To your point, it was there. I can remember ant swarm technology. Retsina, I think, was the name of it. Very open source, but the things you see now that like, I always like salute Google and Facebook now, Matt, for things like Hive and HBase, and a lot of the major, let's call them building blocks of AI, came from those big, huge corporations. So circling back to your Nortel theme, right?
That's also because of data analytics, right? You build this massive database of people pouring information into you that may or may not know that they're giving you. And now you have this huge information model that you can build artificial intelligence off of. Because how smart is AI without the information that's plugged into it, right?
I think you're right that we use the term LLM and we forget what it stands for. I'm one to talk about acronyms, but I've been listening to OpenAI.
And what does it stand for?
Large language model. Yay. So I started seeing stuff come out of Google and Facebook that we just started using in our startup company, Intersat.
So go from the first startup, and then where do you go from there? So what happens, and why do you leave, and where do you go?
Yeah, so that one was four Nortel people who lost their jobs, and one of them had done HP OpenView. It was called Netman Sys, and he did it in Grenoble, France, and he emigrates to North America, works for HP, and then comes and works for Nortel.
And for reference, you and 4 Nortel guys, because tons of people within, especially the Ottawa region with a big hub, all got laid off at the same time. So now they're all sort of scurrying together, and there's a ton of IT people in a city that there's not enough landing spots.
Yeah, and so Invest Ottawa was more like, there's a few ex-Nortel VPs that became VCs that would have these pitch meetings, and it would turn into people whining for Nortel about like, where are our jobs? And this guy finally got mad and said, go do shit. Like, you've got severances, You've got all these ideas. You're asking me for money. You gotta have something like
you basically got a free year to 2 years to go try.
Yeah, he said once in a lifetime. Otherwise, you're gonna go get a job doing what you're doing before.
Back to the cubicle.
And it's not going to be like Nortel. It's going to be smaller versions of Nortel that aren't going to be as nice to you about R&D.
And no more pension.
No more pension forever. And like that's not coming back, right? It sounded like he was talking about the fall of the Berlin Wall to people, and it got us in this idea of like we got to stop going and chatting to him like we're going to get a job. We got to go build something and show it to him.
And you're timing wise, I mean, you could kind of be thankful that you're in the emergence of technology. Like you're in the beginning stages of big stuff, and you were part of a lot of things that were coming out. So you've got a kind of idea on what could pop next, right?
Yeah, and you're right. I could walk out the door with my staff and my IP because Nortel's not worried about protecting tool patents. I had a bit of a name for myself inside of Nortel.
They're not worried about intellectual property because they don't even think it's worth anything.
And the other part that's weird is people that do really well in a big organization don't necessarily do well outside. They expect an infrastructure. Where I was the infrastructure, right? I was a person that was doing facilities like wiring and building buildings, and then all the labs, and the guy that was setting up the labs and tearing them down. The things that people would call jobs.
You're the Swiss Army knife, and some of these other people need other aspects in the job, or otherwise they're kind of useless.
Yeah, and one of this really good mentor, Bill Holman, would go, Karl, you're the guy in the middle. Like if you look in smaller companies, it's the guy in the middle. It's not, the rock star designer becomes an architect, but the person who moves up to management and director has to deal with all that shit you're dealing with, right? They have to get a product out the door. They got to have customer support. They got to talk to salespeople. The coders don't do that.
So you go from startup number 1.
Right. I bounced to that. That was a good try. And it was 4 of us with one mentor learning how to be startups. There was 2 guys, 2 girls, by the way. And it was ahead of its time. I bailed. I brought in a few people that I thought were more appropriate, but I was kind of the COO, believe it or not. And
what age are you at this point?
40.
Okay.
And I bounced to another one where they asked me if I knew anyone who could. I was kind of flirting into headhunting because I was the COO and I was good at building teams. And then I realized headhunting is kind of skeezy. Or they want me to poach people from other startups. It's I get why they pay you, right? They go, I don't want you to go find people with resumes. I want you to steal their CTO.
You're thinking you have a skill and you can turn it into money, and it's not really panning out.
Yeah, and also in high tide, you can charge big. I placed people for free in a lot of places, like Nortel. I placed all these Nortel people for free. So a place called Electronic Courthouse. They had reverse headhunted me by asking if I knew anybody that could be a CTO.
Mm-hmm. You said, "Oh, me."
I went. I can't think of anybody except myself. And they went, "Well, that's why we're calling you. Like, we're not calling you because you're a good headhunter." So, and that was a lawyer that had basically a product that was kind of MVP, had some funding but hadn't closed. And the people that were coding it left. They were contractors, and they tried to kind of.
So, what they bring you in as like a trusted advisor, not to sell, but to convince that this is a reliable product.
Yeah, basically. I'm in trouble. I'm a lawyer. It's online ODR, online dispute resolution. So that's mediation, arbitration. But theory is if you do it online and with the rooms like Zoom, it's less adversarial. If people can't see each other and they aren't in a room together, they don't get on each other's case, and they're much more.
And that was their pitch.
Yeah, and
take your mediation online.
Yeah, and also box it into 4 hours. Like basically, it's called.
You can only fight for 4 hours to get all your points. That would be done.
It's called progressive med-arb or med-arb, where you sit there and argue back and forth and have this kind of lawyer, like an arbitrator, mediator, try and solve things. And if you don't in the first 2 hours, it goes to arbitration, where they go, okay, instead of us trying to mediate and not collaborate, what's the other one? Compromise.
Mm-hmm.
We're now one of us is gonna win. But that person that was mediating is now going to decide which between our arguments is better.
Okay, so you bounce around from startup to startup for a little bit in there, and then you eventually land at Interset.
Yeah, let me walk you quicker. So Electronic Courthouse goes well. We get the funding. I make the first 2 sales because I'm the guy fixing this product, and I'm the one that knows how to run it. So when we do a mock trial, I'm the one in the background doing it, and I'm the one that found 2 people to argue. I got Nortel to be one. Nortel had a kangaroo court, right? All these people asking for severances. That one then leads to people, like one of the people I did the trial with was a place called Ascentus. They wanted to understand if they could rehire one of their key employees. and not get sued or not. And so they went, hey, we see what you're doing. Like they were also our landlord. Why don't you come and run our team, like the fulfillment side? And they got bought by Nuance and High Road Capital doing online work at home kind of transcription. Transcriptions where you take all the doctor's notes out of the hospital and transcribe them.
Okay.
That one did really well. And then I got poached by Gridiron, which became Interset. So that's the lineage. Basically everything rebrand and refunded. And so they went, Gridiron was using grid computing, like come into your corporation and say you're not using all your CPUs, but if we could harvest them, we could use that spare CPU, like the power of many.
So it's reconfiguring what you have inside your computer to make it more efficient,
or accessing it. Like let's say you're not using the computer in a cubicle next. I would create the notion of a virtual grid inside your corporation, and all your computer CPUs can be farmed.
Okay.
And so that was a good concept, and it was exploiting Octo. So Apple computers had 8 CPUs in them.
Right.
And what it was doing before was really cool. It was doing Creative Pro, Adobe, like rendering. So same idea, right? We're going to need to render this cartoon. It's going to run overnight unless we hook up 17 computers massively parallelly and get it done by farming out little chunks of the task. And so they made some money in the creative professional space by selling something called Nucleo Pro. I think they eventually won an Oscar for like visual effects.
Okay, so then that turns into Interset.
That turns into Interset because.
And what are you doing at Interset?
So I'm the third. My joke is I'm the George Harrison of every startup. So Paul McCartney writes the lyrics. John Lennon does the melody. So there's a CEO that's kind of the sales guy and gets a customer and a business idea. CTO, an MVP, technology piece of software, and that was the third guy. And the third guy would be, okay, hey, that's 2 founders who've just sold something to a customer, got funding. Now they need someone to backfill. So Karl, come in, hire a whole bunch of people to code, and you're going to do everything else. But we're going to build a product because the 2 of us got to go out and sell.
Right. And
you're going to mind the farm. And so they brought me in specifically. They saw what I was doing in Ascentus. That was a similar thing, but it was more services and fulfillment.
Yeah.
They brought me into Gridiron to do that, to manage the old product that was still making money and lead the team like as the agile VPN kind of guy.
So of all the startups, Interset is the most successful one.
Yeah, I'd say Ascentus got bought twice by Nuance, so that's doing pretty good.
But I mean, while you're there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the Gridiron switches from this grid computing and Creative Pro to something that Apple and Adobe wanted that was kind of the start of AI. It was using nodes and links to act like a GitHub for creative artifacts. So imagine if you could do an undo on animation.
Okay.
Or like, hey, the dinosaurs have three toes. I want it to, and they're purple. I'd like them to be green. The guy's like going to have to start from scratch unless you can do kind of what if I went back 3 weeks to when I hadn't done the toes yet,
right?
And I could reuse that. And so this idea of we had to store all the fonts and all the colors and all the animation, but we could run it like a ClearCase or a GitHub and go, you want to go to the code from like.
So you're basically caching code and then repopulating it.
But doing it for the concept of pieces of animation.
Okay.
Could be,
that was the specific, like you were marketing to an Adobe?
Yeah, to Apple and Adobe and the Disneys and all those.
So is that who you're selling to? You're not selling direct to consumer. You're selling into B2B?
Yeah, but individual creative pros, like the guys in the basement that are doing clouds and animation, they would buy our software.
So does Interset get bought out as well?
Yeah. So I'll jump forward to that. We switched from this creative pro stuff to share and sync. So Box, Dropbox. And our angle is, but secure would matter. And we were wrong. It didn't matter for a long time until I came back. So part 1 was the share and sync. I left, went to work for Canadian Banknote for a while. So I learned a ton about.
Why do you go from Interset to Canadian Banknote?
I got 3 kids and they're between 13 and 17. And I wanted to be home at like 3:30. That's when all the trouble happens.
Startups are a lot of work.
Yeah. And the other part was the cash. Like you're not only does your money go up and down when you're off, you're burnt out. Right. So it's not like you can just start another job. You need to like rest up.
So when you move to Canadian Banknote, are you now considered cyber, or are you still considered IT and infrastructure?
IT and infrastructure.
Okay.
And with this background in DevOps and hacking, because in the lab you hack, right? I could make the sound out of your mic come out of over here. I could program the video of that camera to feed that monitor. I did a lot of.
You're doing early stage ethical hacking.
Exactly.
You're going, let me test the system to make sure we don't get screwed.
Yeah, and so putting Easter eggs in code to say your name in the middle of a demo is pretty funny. Having when you're typing on the keyboard, having the response not go to your monitor but go to the monitor over there, pretty funny.
Right.
But that's hacking.
Right.
And so I knew a lot of that stuff. You're right. I'm not formally in cyber.
Have you even put any thought into cyber at this point? Because cyber's now around, right? Are you thinking like, oh, I could make a career if I pivot, or is it just like that's not even
it's not a thought process. My dad did go into it at the end of his career. Obviously, we start selling telephone switches into the agencies, and the wiretapping and things like that become a thing in Bell, and
Right.
So I'm aware that there's a career there, but it's spooky spook. And the only thing that starts coming up is privacy. So we start to understand all of that stuff we're doing in Flow, it was called, with the Adobe artifacts. You're working behind the scenes at the primitive level of Microsoft Windows, watching everybody's files.
Right.
When you open a file, close a file, rename it, delete it, we're tracking all of that. So we kind of had to start putting out for privacy. Here's what we track,
Right.
just in case you think that's a little greasy. Because all of a sudden HR wants to use our product.
Right.
And go, hey, we think some guy stole all our architectural drawings and they were written in VCISO. Can you go back and like build a swim lane?
Like who's opened the files? And
And did he transfer them to Box? And did he?
So you're kind of early stage insider threat.
Yep.
Right.
Well played.
Pre-Snowden.
Exactly. And so I leave and go to a Canadian banknote.
And this is because you're sort of getting burnt out time-wise.
Yeah, and I want a stable job and get the kids through off to university.
How long are you in startups for at this point? How long is the bridge from Nortel to?
So 2001, 9/11 is when I get out of Nortel. And this is 2008 to 12. I stay at Canadian Banknote.
Okay. So you do startups for roughly 8 years or so, and then you go, okay, we tried a bunch of stuff. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. I want to go back to stable income at this point.
Just for, and specifically, I literally had a Gantt chart on my whiteboard that showed you guys in university. It looked like a project.
Well, I didn't go to university, but
I was trying to make you. But
planning for university.
That's beside the point. I had this thing. When you guys get out of high school.
Right.
And I had
You're going, okay, here's the path. They're going to go to university. I'm going to make some money in between.
And here's where the last one graduates in 2012, 13, and then I can go back to startups.
Okay.
It turns out that Canadian Banknote's a lot like Nortel. It's family run, it's smaller. And
what do you get hired to do at Canadian Banknote?
Project manager.
Okay.
But for the CTO.
Right.
And he said he's working on a bunch of stuff. And I went, bunch of stuff?
So basically, you're going right under the CTO. You're going to get to go run a whole bunch of cool projects again. And that's what you want to do. You want to be on the next big things and you want to be...
Yeah, I'll be tools guy. I know that they do banknotes, so it's probably secure. I know they do lotteries. And he's doing a lot of stuff.
So even though you're kind of moving in as IT, it really does kind of change into cyber as you're there, right? Like
100%.
You're talking security at this point.
100%. And total accidental tourist in the sense of I work for the CTO. He's got a PhD from Manchester University. His partner in crime came from Memorial. By the way, they're both Malaysian and they both have like A levels, O levels, super smart. And they're doing like Erlang and Haskell, like really weird computational math to do Monte Carlo simulations of lotteries to see if people are
cheating and finding ways to get into the code.
100%.
Right.
So it's
can they guess the next numbers kind of thing?
Yeah, or something. The odds are like the winning percentage in, I guess I can say this, winning percentage in the lottery is 60%. So that doesn't meaning that's how much the payout is. So you you pay back.
I think everyone roughly knows that. But yeah.
And so that doesn't seem like good odds, but if you're like criminals, you go, that's a good way to wash money, right? Rather than a car wash or a laser quest that doesn't make money, I'll just I'll buy a whole bunch of lottery tickets and wash my money. And so people get really mad when someone's cheating. And so you don't know if it's insider threat. You don't know if the lottery balls are wrong. You don't know if something's up. But you
to
can.
that point, I saw a story not too long ago of a guy who was coding for one of the lotteries and wrote in code for specific numbers at a specific date, and he put it pretty far away, like 3-4 years out.
Wow.
And then got his, I don't know the exact chain of people down, but it was like his brother's wife's sister's brother gave him the numbers and then spread the money after. And he goes, just wait. Yeah. Don't put them in. Don't keep putting it. But in 4 years, on January 5th, make sure you put these numbers in. And he got caught.
So there you go on insider threat. Like the ultimate insider. That's always, because I came from the lab, the ultimate insider is the coder, right? Because if I decide I want to play a joke on somebody, or I want to keep some really good default passwords to debug my code, I don't tell anyone.
In case you want to ever break back in.
Yeah, and if you think about
it's basically creating your own backdoor.
I think so. And I think everyone does it to test their code. They do it to support it in the field. Oh my God, I'm on site. I'm in Vegas and I'm trying to debug my demo. Thank God I've got my secret backdoor. I can patch it. And so what starts out as a normal hack becomes a hack. A hacker goes, I know coders do that. And
I'm going to go look for the weak point.
Right. And he probably put an Easter egg in. He probably called it admin. He probably.
I do want to talk about that some more, but I want to get further into where you go, because that is an interesting topic.
Okay.
But so you go Canadian banknote, you're in as a project manager, and then you eventually move into.
I become the CISO in a day.
Right.
So what happens is the CTO is, like I say, he's more interested in lottery and doing computational math. Someone shows up and goes, yo, we aren't going to get a money contract if we don't do ISO 27K. Does anyone know what that is? And I go, I do. ISO 27K is, I don't know what ISO stands for. It's a British security standard. ISO 9000 is an IT standard, and that's the say what you do what you say. Kind of mature your processes by.
So it's a compliance kind of thing?
Compliance thing, thank you. And 27K is specifically around security. And do you have a security system, and do you do continuous monitoring, and do ticketing system, ITSM? It checks for all those kind of abilities to handle security incidents. And so I go, I know what that is. And they go, you're the CISO. Because you have to, rule number one is
you have to have a
CISO.
Yeah.
So they go, oh, Karl's the CISO, ha, ha, ha. But I did have the creds. I did work for the CTO.
So you became acting CISO.
Yep.
Temporarily.
Temporarily, the idea was to get this stupid ISO 27K compliant. Like everyone goes, just get.
They want you to get the
cert,
check mark so that you're compliant.
And then the problem is Bank Canada's our client, and they go, we're going to do audits and threat risk assessments, and where's your CISO? And then we win an e-passport contract. So CBSA wants us to. Suddenly we're in this. We're really good at the anti-money laundering and anti-counterfeit and anti-fraud, and kind of that drifts you into Interpol. Like follow the money and major crimes.
This is where you're getting deep into cyber. Do you realize at the time, like, oh, I'm a cybersecurity guy now, or are you still kind of like, I'm just like I'm doing a side project in my IT career?
Honestly, I was director of, like, immediately when I started taking over stuff, they went, you're a director, and I went, sure, you're right, like I was before, and we can't have you be the CISO if you're not at least a director. I was the director of corporate tools. And they never called it cyber until.
But do you consider yourself cyber at this point?
No, I think I'm a guy that's weaseling my way through audits, and it's just going to go away. But you could see it. All of a sudden, all the contracts start calling this stuff up, and the CEO and the sales guys go, we're getting hit on security, and not the type of security when we think of banknotes. Like we had a CSO, and I won't say his name, but he was ex-RCMP undercover, and he was. Before banknote, he was the diamond mines up in the Northwest Territories. So strip searches, people trying to steal diamonds, and physical turnstiles, and kind of physical security. This was CISO with the information security, and he.
What kind of risks are you guys looking at? Like, what are you looking at in terms of attacks?
So this is where insider threat became. Talking to this guy, he went, I already know who the bad guys are. It's people in security and people with admin, because the people doing the passports and the money, they know they've got cameras on them, and we know who they are.
But are they telling you this inside? Like a banknote, they're going, hey, I think we've got.
I think he knew who's the CSO.
Okay.
Knew instinctively motive, means, and opportunity like a cop, right? And he went, by definition, the people with the
So he's telling you, hey, Karl, we should probably take a look at what's going
Yeah.
on inside. I think we may have some risk.
yeah, and if it's going to be anywhere, it's the people with means and opportunity. It's a McMillions thing. Like, how can to your point, it's a bunch of people's relatives that are out there, and you can reverse trace who's winning to
Right.
well, who's working at McDonald's that knows these people. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to go, well, it's someone who has access to the
Right.
the winning prizes. It's someone who has access to security and all the bank vaults. So if you were to do that reverse engineering in any company, you would tend to go sysadmins and security people tend to have the most privileged accounts.
So you basically unintentionally walk into security based on an opportunity at Canadian Banknote.
Yeah, I think because when you're doing all the audits, it keeps coming back to these people. Like, not that they did anything wrong.
I just mean career-wise, you fall into cyber.
I do, because these problems, the one-of audits don't go away. I end up doing 20 audits.
Okay.
And
so then you go Canadian Banknote.
I go Canadian Banknote because
No, where do you go?
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
where do you go after Canadian
this is the
Banknote?
fun story. So I leave Gridiron and go to Canadian Banknote. I get heavily into this CISO thing, like defending, it's sales, winning contracts, North America, South America, Central America, interesting places, doing forensics and doing like, man, someone's cheating on the lottery or there's money getting out. So I do a lot of investigations, and that's where you meet RCMP and you hear words like treason and you go, holy, this is like deep spookyville, and it's biker gangs and it's organized crime.
Right.
And so you suddenly get into this world where people have been all their lives, like human people that explain to you what's going on and welcome you in because you're the information security guy. They're going, these crimes are changing where people are hacking into systems, where it's insiders, and we need your help. And there's no tools. So I start working on a track and trace thing because you got to do real-time reconciliation, know where all the banknotes are at any point in time, know where all the passports are, inventory management systems.
Yeah.
Those are the tools I'm working on. And I start going, I could make this go a lot faster, right? I could use the AI I was using.
You're going to go back and think about all of the startups you're working
Yeah.
in, all the shit you're working in Nortel, and go, how do we make this more efficient? How do we speed up this process?
And this, it goes to show you who I am, right? Where I call them to do, hey, do you think you could take the product we were working on for Creator Pro, and if I threw all the banknotes in, like they're pictures, they take photos.
Yeah.
If I throw them all in, could you analyze which ones have an error, which ones, and if one's missing, I could go, if I find one on the street, is it counterfeit or real? Well, I could just go back in the database and go look it up. As long as I do it quick, and as long as you're storing relationships of these ones are this batch was all this money here, these pictures, this batch was all printed at night because in a photograph, it's got the metadata like time, place, and what camera.
Or this was all sent to this area, so someone from
Right.
this area, right?
Give me the attendance management badging of that time, and I'm going to narrow it down, right? And so I've got this in my head. That would take a long time with what I'm doing at Canadian Banknote, but some of the nodes and links pattern matching data would go a lot faster. So I go back to them and go, hey, would you build this for me if I would? Do you think this would work? Because I want to pitch it, but before I pitch it, I don't think I can build this inside. I do have some math whizzes that would bite on the idea, and I've got some use cases because we were doing
And probably the
investigations.
funding.
Right? And I knew the owners exactly, but I didn't. And so when I call them, they go, "Geez, that's a good idea. Why don't you come work for us again?"
Right.
Because we think we've got this share and sync product that's really good at security, but no one cares. But we don't have any use cases. Do you think that it would? I go, I'm sure it would work in finance and banks. I'm sure it would work in healthcare, and I think you could use AI to catch bad guys with math.
Right.
And so they brought me back not to be the CTO, but to be the VP Eng. And I went and
that's because you were going, hey, I think there's ways I can pivot your product. Let me come back in here and see where we can move this.
I think exactly. For once, I was going to become, it's George Harrison gets to write his own songs now, right?
Right.
And so they went, sure, you can come back. We still want you to run the team. That's what you're good at. And we got some new money, and we're going to rebrand.
And so this is now 2012 area?
2012, 2013.
Okay.
And so I come back when they're just taking this thing called FileTrack
So this is around the time that I moved back from Cayman.
Yep.
Is when you're starting back.
I'm like a 55-year-old guy going for the victory lap when people go, I don't know if he's got it. Like he's been out for 4 years. Who is he? But I'm finally coming back where I'm writing my song.
Right. Okay.
And like before, I've never been the product guy or even, I didn't know anything about Creative Pro. Like I was never a domain expert. And Interset suddenly decides to go for it, that share and sync, Dropbox box, it's a good market, but and they don't care about security and we've missed the wave, but we've got all this funding from Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're people knew about the Apple, Adobe, we came close. We won Best in Show at Macworld 2007. Other winners include iPhone. Like we got on the list and we almost got bought out. It just bad timing, recession. So we get this Silicon Valley money that wants to keep Canadian content because we get all the write-offs and we had Canadian investors. I'm running the Canadian shop and they go, okay, pivot. You got agile 6 months. I want to see a demo in 4 weeks. You got 2 tries. And we built this insider threat thing. It was a real weird kind of thing for me too, because I think it's about tells and cheats. And all the purists, the AI guys went, no, Karl, you're not understanding objective Bayesian and subjective Bayesian logic that says you have a theory, but you let the data prove it. You're guessing. You're
going off emotion. You're going off, I think on human,
I
can go in and look and I can make tells versus they're going, no, build something that's codable that it can track.
And so we use, it's kind of policy and rules based if you think of firewalls, but it was pseudo using AI, at least the storage. And my thing was the stereotyping people, back to my Myers-Briggs thing. I called like levers. So a lever is you're doing your job and you're collecting data and changing files and who knows if you're stealing or not, but you're heating up your resume.
Right.
Which is a tell. They go, why are you just puffing up your resume and doing it over and over? And we all do it, right? When we're about to leave a company, we go, I better have my resume up to date. And I've been working here for 4 years at Canadian Banknote. I'm not going to find a job unless I start perfuming my resume a bit. And so it's a bit of a tell that someone might be leaving, especially if you're a backup guy or you're an sysadmin or security.
So then take me Interset to next step.
So Interset, we hire a whole bunch of AI people, let them take over as the CTO. We got one of the Stéphane Joux, he's top 5 kind of deep learning guy out of U of T. And he's since stayed with the company. Let me think about how that works. We get into a space called UEBA. We put the E in UEBA.
And UEBA stands for?
User and entity behavioral analytics. So we're doing...
And that's basically insider threat.
Yeah, 100% insider threat. And it's using how you and files and location are interacting, almost like a game of Clue to go, there's a crime happening, right? You're sending files that are very sensitive to your home.
Right.
And we know it's your user. And so we can do that with a machine learning and AI to find a needle in a haystack. And it becomes a sidebar to SIM, where SIM was just, linear events and reactive alarms and going, hey, someone's doing something illegal. This is more, it's not looking illegal, but in the end, they're committing a crime.
Right.
And so that becomes...
Whereas a SIM's going to pull up the obvious information where UEBA is going, okay, nothing obvious happened here, but what if you connect all the dots?
So, and if you think back to Zero Trust and the evolution of that, it's that, a bad guy with nothing, no credentials, and doesn't work in your company breaking in is going to set up some alarms, door alarms, you name it.
That's what the stack is for.
Yeah. If you think the bad guy in these sophisticated crimes is a user with no privilege, well, he's got to do a lot of work he's got a privilege escalate. Right. So the people that could steal some stuff already have privilege.
Right.
So it's going after.
And how do you set off flags to people that aren't setting off flags?
Yeah, I'm doing my job.
Right.
I'm security. I can actually go and turn down the SIM. I'm the coder that goes, hey, whenever it's me, don't send the alarm.
Right.
So if you have that kind of
the physical security guard has the code to the alarm system.
Yeah,
right.
And that's an interesting thing you point out of is, like the Reservoir Dogs or major crimes take 5 people. Right? You need a guy that can pick the lock. You need a guy with explosives, Ocean's 11 or whatever. But that's true in insider threat. It's never a lone wolf. It's either a mastermind lone wolf that's either compromised or sucked people around him in.
Unless you have the credentials all the way through. This is what I'm saying is like a physical guy that's in charge of watching the lockbox who has the code. Well, he knows how to turn off the alarm system.
Right.
Right. If that guy's on your team,
Yeah.
you're
dealing with people who are allowed to do a backup guy, right?
Right.
I'm going, hey, Karl, it looks like you're sending large files to your home.
And to
I
that
do
point,
that every night.
I think that's why, infrastructure started looking deeper at who has access to files that, like, okay, yeah, it was necessary for them to look at, but how much access were we giving them pre-Snowden, right? Because did Snowden need to know about everything that was in those files?
Right.
No, but did he have access? Yes. And so now people go, unless you have like a direct reason to know about these things, they're completely locked to you.
So now if you go back in Interset, where they were correct going, Karl, you and your Myers-Briggs, man, like, come on, it's cheats. And I go, you're right. They actually had stereotypes. One's called like Snowden's an example of overly curious, right? He's just an admin guy, and he keeps getting more and more admin and talking to people and go, hey, what's in that file? Another one's a poker. Like I'm gonna try and break into sensitive systems and go, oops. When it gives me the yes/no prompt, are you sure you're allowed to be here? I go, oh, sorry, man.
Right.
One's a hoarder. Why is Brad sitting beside Karl need twice as much storage? And what's he storing? Like, why is he hoarding shit? Those are all kind of precursor tells to suspicious. It's not suspicious behavior yet, but it's a precursor to someone about to start to do something bad.
So you're doing insider threat at Interset, and then do you go directly from Interset into contracting?
That's a good question. I kind of do. I go, that was clearly my victory lap, and I think it's going to be successful. I'm letting the AI guys take over and, getting my options and whatever out. And I think I want to say I'm 55, and I'm going, okay, that's it. It'll never get better than that.
Right.
In the meantime, it's overlapping, right? When you're at a startup, it doesn't necessarily M&A. But if it does a couple of years later, unlike you got to be on a sports team to get the ring. If you're on a sports team and 3 years later they get an M&A, they go, weren't you with that company? You go, yeah, we sold out. So,
yeah, right.
So by that time, Ascendus is sold twice.
Mm-hmm.
And Interset's clearly Gartner MQ. There's a new UEBA category. We put the E in. Gartner says we're top 4. We're made, right?
You're getting credentials.
I'm getting cred, and I go, it'll never get better than this, and I'm done. I need to cash in. So
Right.
How do you cash in? I go and do other startups and be like a VC or board guy, but that's hard. That's really hard to be the money guy. I'd love to do it, but I don't, didn't have that. And so I said consulting. And if you're in Ottawa, there's one big client. So
Right.
I got to start to groom myself to be that. Like everyone looked at my resume and went, you're a startup guy.
Right.
I went, and everyone hides their Nortel, past.
But I've got all these creds, and I worked on this project, and I worked on this project.
Yeah.
And that means that I can consult you back on the next big.
Right. And so it's one of those things where you go not to the people that are from Nortel or startups for advice. You go to people that are being good consultants. And I went to Mike Zeus, who's the king of pen testing and whatever in Ottawa. And he said, well, first of all, I'm my own brand. Like I don't have a website and whatever. Like you need to get clients, and then those clients, it's a referral business.
So basically, you're trying to contract into the government. Are you pitching yourself as a cybersecurity consultant at this point, or are you just going, I'm going to niches?
I think like anybody, I'm an ex-executive, and I'd like to slice in. And so,
who do you contract to first?
Well, I don't. What I do is I listen to Mike's advice, and then Matt Davies and a few other people go, you need to look like a consultant. I go, what does that mean? He goes, well, you look like a startup guy. So you're going to get jobs in startups. You're going to keep getting jobs in startups that won't pay you for 3 months, and then you'll become the CTO. And if you don't want to do that again, you need to look like a consultant. I go, well, what's a consultant look like? They go, Big Four. So PwC.
Oh, that's right. You go to PwC.
Yeah. So I go to Bell first, which is Bell gives me they had trouble with ETI. They called it ETI Strike 3. That's the funny thing about Cocos and email. That's the government email, right? And so Bell is trying to deliver that. And because I'm Nortel, because I'm startup, and I've done ISO 27K, they go, we need a director of the SOC. And we got this big project with the government.
Explain what the SOC is.
Security Operations Center. So it's got SIMs, and it's got people that are looking at alerts and doing firewall changes and hardcore. Now, I've done hardcore in Nortel, but IT.
It's been a long time since you've done hardcore, and it's not cyber related.
Right. And I've always never been afraid to do operations, because I go, you can make a lot of mistakes in operations when you're learning. It's when you're in design and when you're in sales that you're visible. So I kind of like that opportunity of, I'll go in and I'll learn. I'll be the executive, but I'll learn what people are doing and how hard can it be. And it's
so now you're in Bell, you're running the SOC,
and it's a nightmare. Like it's like an emergency unit or a call center. It's alerts and alarms. It's the largest SOC in Canada. It's got all the Fortune 500s, and I got 200 people working, 150 people working for me. Lots of managers, right? Yeah. But I think CSE comes and knocks on my door in the first week and goes, yo, need all your logs. And it's like, what for? And they go, just need to.
Don't ask.
I'm like, okay.
And don't say that CSE called.
And it's not us. And they, there's ex-CSE people and ex-Army people working for me. They go, they're coming. And it's all gray.
Yeah.
Gray. It's changed a lot. But that, I realize I'm in that world the same way I realized it at Canadian Banknote when it's RCMP and treason. I go, what's going on here?
Actually, yeah, explain who CSE is too, just for audience who don't know.
Yeah, Canadian Security Establishment. And I think they even argue there's a C after it. But they're the agency that deals with signals intelligence. So like the NSA.
Is there? Yeah, I was just going to ask, what's the direct comparison to the U.S. version? Yeah, so it's the Canadian NSA.
CSIS is CIA.
RCMP is FBI.
Yeah.
CSE is NSA.
Yeah. And like we all think of NSA and Snowden as the spy on us. CIA is the human intel and does foreign spies.
Right.
Whereas NSA and CSE is worried about signals intelligence in Canada.
Right. Okay, so CSE calls, you're stressed to the T. You got 100 alarms going off.
We do. I mean,
how long do you stay at the Bell SOC?
I stay a good 6 months, and I literally learned. One, I burnt out because I was the escalation prime. I thought that meant like other directors from other companies would call me and go, "Hey, we're kind of upset about our service." It was no, on the shift you get called. Like you're the night manager. So
do you go Bell to PwC? Is that the next step?
Yeah. And
this is you're just thinking in your head, I got to keep growing my resume to go back and consult because I don't want to look like startup.
How soon can I look like a consultant?
Okay, so you go to PwC, and what do you get hired as at PwC?
So same accidental tourist, and I get headhunted both those times. So I'm grateful for whoever decided I was good at that. I become the associate partner. So I've never worked. I'm a 55-year-old intern. They win.
Sorry, what do you get hired as?
Associate partner. So associate director partner. Level to associate partner.
And what did they hire you for?
Cyber resilience, because just like Bell, they win this contract with SSE called KITES, which is an $80 million contract for winners.
And SSE is Shared Services Canada, who runs the government of Canada.
Thanks, man. And they're corporate IT. So you have a point that I understood that customer having worked at Nortel.
Right.
And I go from delivering ETI, the enterprise email to shared services, to supplying cyber talent on an $80 million contract, of which we won a quarter. So we're supposed to pump in 60 people a year kind of thing as security.
So are you managing those people that are being sent into SSE kind of?
I'm running a P&L. It's weird.
What's a P&L?
Profit and loss. So they go, we don't have anybody. We won the contract. Karl, it's yours. It's a $20 million contract. Good luck. By the way, you need to make $20 million this year. So you're the BD guy. You need to hire all those people. So you're the practice lead, and you need to build the team. So
and then how long do you stay at PwC for?
6 months.
Right.
And that was a bit different because
how big did this team end up being underneath you?
There's two of us, Zena, who gets hired at the same time as me and told you two are working together.
Yeah, but how many people are you managing for this contract?
We ended up, by the time I quit, we had 10 people in a year, which is doing pretty well. So think of that as $10 million. It gets to 20 in year two. Zena runs it. But in between there, everybody that I hire goes, yo, you need to be an independent contractor. Like, you're crazy to work there. You're going to make more money being an independent.
And you're stuck where you are. They're not going to keep pushing you up.
And the second part is, I'm like one level below partner. And to get in to be a partner, you got to pay a mortgage, right? Like, they're not going to let you into the firm.
Right.
And
so then,
I'm 55.
So the end of PwC, you figure, okay, I've done enough here to pivot. I'm going to go be a consultant.
Yeah. Like I say, I go and hire all the whales. Like the managing partner at PwC Canada National turns out to be my neighbor through public school, high school, university, and goes, yo, Go hire the best people, like build it and they'll come.
Mhm.
So I do that. And everyone that I hire goes, you should be one of us. You should go independent. And the thing you don't realize is you got to have clearance. You got to apply. I can't make any money. Like you have to be 60% utilized. I don't know what that means. Like if you would know that in resellers, like if they say your engineers have to be 60% utilized, they got to bill.
Right.
And so I had to bill 60%. And the only way to do that is to get a government contract. I can't just show up and do statement of works or help. You got to get your clearances, you got to have your CISP, and you got to win a contract. You got to bid yourself.
Right.
And once you bid yourself, you go, I got to be on site because of security. I can't be back here managing the firm. So I do that. I win a contract. I win it with Chris Warham and Rob Samuel and GCSI. And
with what department?
SSC.
Okay.
And it's deep cyber. It's classified. So
then you go get your clearances.
I get exactly.
Do you go straight up to top secret? Where do you start?
God bless PwC and God bless Canadian Banknote. Canadian Banknote, I had to have secret clearance because Bank of Canada to do the audits. PwC said, get your secret clearance. You're in cyber, go get all the clearances you can.
So you get top secret at PwC?
Yep.
And what's the next? You get one level above, right?
Yep. That's agency SIGINT level. I've got that in the agencies, and I've also got it for D&D.
Right.
And that's the extreme one, I would say, and conditional on polygraphs and all that. But they all make like
talk about that. What do you have to do to get those clearances that you're allowed to say?
Yeah, they get to do a full background check, and that extends to not just your immediate family, but your extended family. So anyone, even if you've been divorced for less than 10 years, they're allowed to look at your ex, mother-in-law, father-in-law.
And so for
brothers,
reference,
sisters.
like I have secret clearance, and they ask you an abundance of questions of where you've lived, who you know, and who your parents are, and all your siblings, and where they live, and blah 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 blah, all the way down the road.
Right.
So what are the additional steps for top secret clearance? You have to go sit down and do a polygraph?
Yeah. So that what you just described is a background check. I want to see the people in your circle of influence and understand their financial, criminal activity, anything that
any potential connections.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's rule that out. And then the second one is more, we want to understand that you're a patriot and that you're honest. So it's a bunch of interviews with a polygraph that I can't go into the detail on, but establishes if you're telling the truth about your background and whether or not you've done things to compromise your integrity.
Right.
How
okay.
about that?
So then you start in SSC. Give me a fast briefing of which departments you've contracted to and what are the bigger projects that you've worked on.
Okay. Start with CRA. CRA has a combo SANA, which is security.
CRA is Canada's IRS.
Correct. Well put. And so they that's one place where the threat is everyone. Like everyone would love CRA to their website to go down.
And so sorry, at this point when you're starting a contract in at SSC, now are you considering yourself, I'm a cyber guy? Or are you still thinking yourself, I'm IT guy on special projects?
I'm going for it. Once I got to PwC, I went.
You're branding as cyber guy.
And I can reverse brand like all the way back to Interset. So basically
like 2012 area, you are being cyber guy, but you're not really considering yourself cyber guy. You're like, these are cool IT projects.
Yeah.
And from 2012 to 2018?
I think my public sector thing starts in 2017, but I can count Bell.
For 5 years, you're basically working in cyber, but not really considering yourself cyber.
Yeah.
And then you spend a year going to PwC and Bell, branding yourself as a cyber consultant for the most part.
Yeah.
And then
I get my first contract.
Now you start walking into the government being a cyber consultant.
Yeah. And so I get a quickie one. I take all the 3-month ones that no one wants.
Right.
And one was, this guy was writing, Raj Supal, who's the ADM of SSC, writing his business transformation plan, like his yearly budget. I come in and ghostwrite that.
Right.
And so it's 3 months.
You do a bunch of ghostwriting at the beginning, don't you?
Yep. Yep. And
and this is basically just pre-establishing your name, right?
Yeah.
You're going, okay,
Karl's out hanging a shingle and getting contracts.
And eventually people start to recognize the work you're doing and they go, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. He's got good stuff. Let's hire him as the guy instead of the ghostwriter.
That's an interesting point. I try it every time and people go, aren't you the PwC guy? Because in PwC, I was coming in as an executive,
right.
pitching them.
You're having to reestablish yourself inside the government.
But what happens is, and you're right, it's cool about being an old guy, right? Is you go in and you're ghostwriting, and then if you're ghostwriting, it'll be an execs. And the exec goes, aren't you like that guy? And I go, yeah, I used to. They go, well, screw that, man. You should be working for me. And
so you realistically, sorry, I'm just trying to tie it all together, but you realistically start in quote unquote cyber around 55-ish.
Yeah.
And
hardcore, like consciously. Yeah.
And at that point, you're almost 30 years of IT behind you.
Yep.
Okay. And so you're really only starting cyber. I mean, it depends how far you want to generalize cyber, right?
Yeah.
But you're only starting like hardcore cyber in the 55 area.
I'd say you could go back to Canadian Banknote and say, okay, 2008, he's doing cyber.
Right. Okay. So then you branch yourself back into the government. You've rebranded. You're a cybersecurity consultant. You start landing contracts with SSC. You land contracts with CRA.
Yeah.
You land contracts with D&D. Who are the other notable ones that you are allowed to talk about?
Okay. So CRA, 2 tours.
Yeah.
Garden Variety, Security Architect, SANA, Assessor combo. Notable things in there would have been lots of interesting things with the tax system and insider threat, but CRA WAF. So thank you. It's more your gig than mine. And I was working both sides of it. SSC needed to set it up for CRA, and CRA was at the partner department that received it. And so that's my go-between between SSC and CRA at the start. SSC pulls me in, you're right. SSC pulls me in as the chief security architect, the original guy that hired me out of...
So you're starting at this point when you go to SSC, you're starting to move from, I'll call it project management and insider threat into security architecture.
Yeah, I never thought I was an architect because remember, I'm not that guy through Nortel. I'm not a designer like coder. But when you're inside an enterprise, it's cobbling things together, products together, which I'm really good at. And so the security department that Kites was the name of it that PwC won the contract for, the head chief architect was the one that hired me and said, I want that guy. He's working on specific projects as the SME.
Right.
I want him to be the chief architect under me.
Right.
And I got a portfolio of products. And his partner in crime was Eric Boris, who turns out now working at Cisco was the PMO. So he had the products or project suite of all the cyber major chunks. And so this guy can go between them all and switch them together and talk to vendors. So that's when I become the Karl.
So now you're becoming a security architect. People are starting to respect the name and what you're doing. List off the departments. You don't have to go into detail of what you're doing in each one, but just list name by name what departments you've worked for along the whole strand.
Okay. So
SSC,
CRA, SSC, CRA, and then 5 years at SSC with this chief security architect. And then I spin out, they create a CTO group. Of course, I look like a CTO, so I'm a charter member of that. That was with Don Messier, who had been my boss's boss at CRA. So that I consider, and that gets into zero trust and AI and APIs. And I consider that a combo 5 years. And then I go back to CRA. Transport Canada is in there.
Yeah.
I go to public safety, which is CSIS.
Yeah.
A stint at SSC. Sorry, while I'm at SSC, I'm at CSE as well. And what am I missing? And I just started Health Canada and in Arcan.
You've done more than that in between there too. You did stuff at GAC.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I did. Sorry, they kind of overflow sometimes, but I've done a part-time 3-year contract at GAC with Secure Comms.
You did some at D&D too, no?
Mostly with vendors. So I do a lot of helping vendors go into CSE and D&D in places, but I don't think I ever explicitly worked
directly to D&D.
No.
Okay. So and then maybe name off a couple of the bigger projects or more interesting things that you worked on that would be of interest.
I think the things I really liked my time at CTO, but that was doing vision strategy things around AI and zero trust, and those got published and took hold in their bigger projects. The one I liked most was working in SSC for the chief architect and carving up his portfolio. So SIM, endpoint, network, I'm missing one, VAs. So really kind of the whole enterprise roadmap for security was what we built. And that's the role I'm reprising now. Like people ask me to build a roadmap. So what's going to happen in the next 5 years, Karl? What's the basic foundational cyber hygiene we should build on and get our cyber maturity up the CMMI phase to, CMMI 0 is ad hoc, CMMI 1 repeatable, 2 is managed, 3 is quantified, so key metrics, 4 is optimized. And so most, the best HIPAA bank healthcare places get the 2.5. Most of the governments pushing past 1. So they bring me in to do, how do we score audit points, compliance points?
Yeah.
And it's not just points, you're making yourself more safe, but what's the roadmap, the 5-year roadmap that's going to get our enterprise cyber to there?
Okay. So I think that gives the majority of your background, what you've done, the important things you've worked on, and sort of, I wanted to outline what it looked like start to finish, how to get into cyber and how to keep yourself in cyber, because I think that's a topic that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to talk about how that relates to today. So like, that's how people for your generation would have mostly got into cyber, is some sort of background in IT.
Yeah.
Especially if you're on the engineering side, you had to have some sort of probably electrical engineering degree and then some sort of IT background, which you wouldn't have got the IT background without the electrical engineering degree at the time.
Agreed.
And then you walked yourself into sort of the niche up and coming stuff, which turned into being cyber. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, I think most people like boomer age or accidental tourists, because cyber wasn't there when we started.
Right.
We would say that everyone had a background in IT admin. Whether you had electrical engineering or however, you definitely had to be a sysadmin person.
There was no cyber courses you could take back then. You couldn't just, there was no path to cyber. It wasn't.
It's all very self-serve too. Like the pen testers, they're all self-trained.
Right. Right. And so I think, if we want to talk about how you get in today, at least from my personal perspective, as you were, I wanted to mention this when you were giving your story, but I figured I'd let your sort of story play out first and then kind of go back to it. But
let Dad talk himself out.
Well, because I've been wanting to get into cyber for a long time too. You've been pushing me to look into the field, and I was like, okay, whatever, I'll sell anything. I can. I like sales, and I'm super into IT and technology, but like, why cyber? And I didn't really get it, especially at the beginning stages. Like, I don't even know what cyber is,
right.
And why do I care? And it sounds complex. No thanks.
That's true. There's a resistance to coming in.
But that being said, I was always interested in opportunity, and almost every single spot you went to, I weaseled my way in somehow to try and force an opportunity. So as you went to Canadian banknote, which was, I would have been, I don't know, how old am I now? 18 then? Somewhere around there?
17, 18.
Yeah, I'm just coming back from the Cayman Islands. I have a minimal sales background, but I know it's what I want to do. I'm hard-headed in the fact that I don't need school and that I'll be fine and I'll run a business or I'll go into sales and I'm gonna sell whatever it is. So you're like, oh, there's lots of money in cyber. I'm like, okay, well, I'll sell cyber then. Let me go see.
Yeah.
So I'd show up to your pickup hockey games with the C levels of Canadian banknote, and afterwards at the bar talking to.
You're working them.
The whole time I'm working them, trying to figure out how do I get a job and what's the next opportunity cost, and I'm making business deals on how we bring the lottery to the Cayman Islands, and I'm figuring like this is early stages, right?
Yeah, and you were doing like I thought you're having fun. Like, I'll let this play out, but they'd come back to me and go like, he's really good.
Well, and so this is where I want to reference that. I think a lot of people will assume, oh, you're in cybersecurity, your dad got you a job. Yeah. Oh, congrats! Like it was so hard for you.
Yeah.
But I took the opportunity and ran with it any chance I got.
I've never got you shit. I've never, like, in the whole time we've been together, have I sold one thing for you?
No, I mean you open doors for me, right? But
conversations.
Everybody needs to. You got to open a door somehow, right?
Yeah.
But I took those opportunities and I ran with them as much as I could, and Canadian banknote didn't turn into anything. But I'm potentially, like, I'm opening up a door to potentially run part of Canadian banknote by myself in the Cayman Islands at 18 years old, right? It doesn't turn into anything.
It actually did at work. Like they say, hey, Karl, keep chasing Caymans. Like, it was on their list of.
Well, the only reason it didn't pan out is because the Cayman Islands government would not bend on the fact that they were going to bring in a lottery. I think things have changed now, but at that time, there was no opportunity to do so. But if it came, I was first in line to go bring that opportunity. And
they were both sides were thinking about it. Like the Canadian government was, like, it was in the papers, And we were talking to them.
And it's not like Doug came to me, the owner of Canadian Banknote, and said, hey, do you want to run a lottery? It was me going, hey, what do you guys got going on?
Yeah.
Oh, is there anything I could do in the Cayman Islands? You know, I was pitching myself to go, what could I do for you?
Yeah,
I can sell some stuff. What could I do for you? Here's my background. And we formulated that together. And I just kept showing up to hockey games going, hey, Doug, remember that stuff we were talking about? How can I? And I don't even have a professional job yet at this point, right?
I think if I had to if we went back to that story and went, but how'd you get that job? 7 out of 10 of the answers would be hockey.
Well, not just that though. Also, like, we're going. How many different jobs did you move to that I kept showing up to the parties and going, hey guys, like, I don't have any cyber experience, but I promise you I'm really good. Like, you may want to take a look. And I kept I must have tried 5 or 6 different places, and I kept getting honestly, you pitch yourself really well.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I can sell up above to a guy with no degree and no experience that we're gonna bring in. Like, if I ran the show on my own,
that's
like
true.
If I was in a startup, I would fucking hire you right now. But actually, I'm not, and so I can't.
That was the comment, and they would come to me and say that, and I go, hey, thanks, he's a good guy, and I go, no, I'm serious, I want to hire him.
And I was never worried at any point that, man, like, what am I gonna do? I'm never gonna get into cyber. I'm not gonna sell. I was getting told no over and over and over again, and I'm like, well, somebody's gonna be smart enough to pick me up. That was my mindset: is someone's gonna be smart enough to choose me. It wasn't like, hopefully I'm good enough. I was always like, no, someone's gonna hit the jackpot when they hire me.
That's actually what people say. I mean, don't let it go to your head, but that their view is he's gonna land somewhere and do really well.
And I think the first point of validation I really got was when we went to Joe Deckley when we went to another hockey game, and this was again you getting invited places by
you're the extra
by vendors and you going, can I bring him? So again, like, granted, that door opening to you, because without that I don't get to meet those people. Yeah. But are there other ways to meet those people? Sure. But
you were like a +1. There was no agenda or
And who says, like, 20-year-old or however old, I don't know how old I was at that point. I was probably 23, 24, something around that age.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. Regardless, who says 24-year-olds are going to go, yeah, Dad, I'm going to show up to the hockey game and pitch myself to these random guys I have no idea. Most people are going to go, I'm not doing that, right? Like, so when people say, like, oh, you got the door open or whatever, like, I ran with the stuff, and that's what you have to do.
You kept kicking at it.
I was kicking the door open.
And you're way better than me. Like, I go around being the Karl and not realizing it's potentially a job interview where you...
I'm taking everything as a job
interview. And I know other people in Melissa says that. Karl, you're always interviewing.
Right.
Think about it.
So then we go to that hockey game, and there's a bunch of vendors there, and I've left you wherever you are in the booth, and I'm going to talk to everybody I can find, and trying not to reference that you're my dad, just hoping that people assume I'm supposed to be there. And eventually I talked to Joe, who's what is his position at?
I felt Joe was the country manager or regional manager. Yeah.
So I go to talk to Joe, and I sit there for the rest of the game, and I pitch I've narrowed in that this is one of the guys that could maybe hire me, and I pitch myself to him, and he says, look, I want to hire you. Your pitch was good. Like, I think there's talent there, and I think I could mold you. So perfect. Next step is we need to send you to Israel for training, and you need to have...
You need a degree.
No, he says, he just assumes there's no way you have this level of intellect and you're pitching yourself this well with no degree.
Yeah.
So he goes, what's your degree so I can put it in the system? And I go, yeah, about that. I don't have a degree.
And they were upset. I remember it's at a hockey game where the local, the regional account manager goes, yo, I think your son's would he work for us? I'm like, yeah. Dude, it's the second period of a hockey game. What are you talking about?
So he goes,
I think they're going to hire him.
He goes, well, I can't, like, based on the system at Checkpoint, like, has nothing to do with me. You have to have a degree to get to the Israel training.
Yeah.
And so I can't send you without a degree.
Yeah.
If you had any degree, I could make the rules bend, but, like, I can't send you with nothing. But you know what he said to me that really validated
What's
me?
That?
He sat with me at the end of the hockey game. He said, look, I have no question. Like, I'm not worried for you. I'm not even going to reference you somewhere because I know you're going to land somewhere. You give that same pitch you gave to me to somebody else, they're going to hire you.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
He said, don't worry about it. You're going to land somewhere soon.
I do I do remember at the time, I hadn't even met him before, but realizing it was significant. He was a good guy. And he's very entrepreneurial. He's at Okta now.
Yeah,
I was gonna work for him on helping Okta get in, but he's one of those guys I think that really judges people well.
Well, and it's one of those things where like you got to swing the bat more to get more hits. Like, it's not a perfection game, right? Like if I keep, eventually I'm gonna find an entrepreneur type director, and he's gonna go, that was me 10 years ago.
I think
and
if
if someone would have given me that shot, I would have soared through the roof, and someone's gonna recognize that and go, I need to hire that guy.
I certainly made a career doing that as the hire guy in startups. I mean, I'm not. I've always had good teams. I've always had really smart people. I didn't think of myself as smart because I was the manager. Like I wasn't domain smart, but I can project people when I meet them into what they're good at and and how far they can get in hockey or sport, but also in business. And so you're right. When I see people, I go, that person's going to be really good in sales.
Right.
And the reason is, like you said, not because I know, it's because I go, I know people that are really good in sales. And their resume, if you dial it back, looks exactly like that guy.
There's a mold, right?
Yeah.
And so then eventually...
It's like Insider Threat. There's a whole bunch of tells on that person that looks like that guy that's 40.
So then eventually we get to a place where one of your contemporaries is trying to backfill himself at a startup, right? And he's doing a lot for a startup. He's basically being you, and he's being me. Yeah,
good point. COO, CISO, CTO, and the sales guy.
And the main sales guy.
He's doing it all.
The only sales guy for Ottawa. So then he looks to you to backfill, and you're like, well, I've got a ton of contracts. I'm not backfilling that. I can maybe help, but there's no way I'm doing the whole thing.
And it's startups, right?
Right.
So it's the one place I go, I won't go back there because I'll burn out. Yeah.
And you'll go, well, you can try my son. Well, you can see what happens.
Or combo us. Yeah, you need a combo.
So that does open a big door for me. But again, I need to pitch myself to the CEO and go,
right.
Why do I want you? Yeah, I want Karl. So why do I want you exactly? Yeah. And I do the same pitch. I go, great at sales my whole life.
Is this your 3 months and I'll fire myself kind of speech?
Yeah, I tell them, well, you're gonna like if I'm not selling anything in 3 months, not only am I not gonna work there, you're not gonna want to work there, and you can just end my contract. You can put something in the contract that says if you don't want me there in 3 months, then you can fire me, and I won't take any severance.
Yeah, like you can write it in. I'm not sure.
Take the risk, and then it's no risk, right?
Yeah.
We're 3 months in. I'm at a small salary. I think I started at like, I want to say $50,000 a year,
50 or 60.
Not very high, and I'm
for
making,
3 months, right?
I'm only making like 35,000 ish at the source at the time, and I'm killing every bonus I can get. I'm topping the store in sales. I'm topping the store,
and it matters this much.
And I'm hitting every bonus that there is. Every time there's a company-wide sales target, I'm crushing them all. I'm getting sent to the Google keynote because I'm selling top 5 Google in the entire country. Like I'm burning out at the source.
By the way, that's one of my tells is someone's like McDonald's employee of the year when they're a student, or they're a college pro painter, sold the most. I go, these are impossible jobs, man.
And you know what? Granted, like I was selling well at other stuff. I was doing all those same targets, working in optical sales.
Right.
I was topping the store for 6 months straight.
Yeah, Laurier.
I was top in Canada for however long. Like I'm selling well everywhere I go, but I'm never going to branch into cyber without something. So I go to the source and I go, okay, at least this is IT sales.
Yep.
Right now I can go.
It's pre-Bell. I think it's pre-Bell.
I'm doing Bell sales. That's what I'm doing. And I'm learning about fiber to the node, and I'm learning about how the internet works there, right? I'm learning as much as I can, but then I'm burnt out. I'm like, now I got to pivot. So then I pitch myself to the cyber guys, and they go, okay, well, we'll take a run at you, but you're on thin ice. Like you either make shit happen quick, or
and you're by yourself. It wasn't like a junior leader.
I'm expecting to come in and I'm gonna
like
have
you're
a director.
Tyson.
He's gonna tell me what to do. He's gonna walk me through. I have no training. I'm given no patch. I'm given nothing. It's just go figure it out and land us somewhere.
Yeah.
So I start making spreadsheets and Googling stuff and calling you. And
I remember you took I built a Rolodex of everybody I know, and it's like 20 people.
I'm making spreadsheets with emails, and I'm cold emailing people, and I'm making a target list, and I'm building a graph on where do I need to start and where do I need to finish. And I'm just making stuff up. Like I'm just guessing based on what I know from business.
You're also doing bids right away, like huge government of Canada bids.
Yeah, I'm poaching bids and going, I think that's us. I don't know. Does that sound like us? And I'm using you as my SE. So again, like you open doors, no question. You got me on calls, which was big. and having you as an SE, like as a behind the scenes SE, like basically calling you every day and going, what the fuck is this? How do I
mean, you quickly displaced me as a better SE, in my opinion. Like your knowledge of firewalls and those products, probably better than mine. I can talk like solution architect-y talk, but like a pound for pound SE.
Yeah, point of the matter is though, like maybe I could open the doors other ways, but the doors open because of you. But I had to sell myself all the way through, and I had to keep proving myself at ISG.
You got 5 minutes because of me.
And it's not. We also didn't. I didn't start in cyber at Fortinet with firewalls. I started with cryptographic vulnerability assessments. Like that's not simple stuff.
It isn't.
They're doing quantum crypto.
Yeah.
Like it's very complex.
That's true. That your intellect was able to grasp complex things. So it's funny about how to get into cyber is you need an IT admin base, but
you better be able to understand
it gets
whatever
scary
the product
quick.
is.
It gets really scary quick.
You go deep into the trenches very fast, and good luck selling something you don't understand.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a complex sell.
You know how uncomfortable you get as in a sales meeting when someone asks you a question and you go, I don't know.
and you're never not selling to experts. Like it's not a CIO or a CEO that goes, I hear.
Not selling to the sales director.
Yeah. It's definitely you eventually. They say there's 3-tier selling in cyber. There's that hacker on the ground floor. There's kind of the SOC manager.
Well, I couldn't.
And then there's a CISO. Like there's 3 different people, but they all like really know cyber.
I couldn't even open some of the files because I didn't have secret clearance.
Yeah.
So someone else had to read it and reference me what's going on, right? So then I have to prove myself there.
I wouldn't say you're way out of your league just by watching you do it. I go, I don't need to help you here, but man, you bit off a lot.
Though.
Yeah,
I was in deep water
and
I floated, but like,
you
know, I did the best I could, and I think getting to the finals of a major government bid was what really went. Insane. You know what? Like, not only did I find the bid and then align myself with a partner.
Yeah.
So I started reaching out, obviously with reference to your Rolodex, but I'm starting to reach out to people and go, who can I partner with? How do I make this work? I find a VAR, and now I'm managing a $20+ million bid, and I've never been a part of any cyber project at all, and I'm running it by myself. I'm making the calls. I'm telling who. I'm saying who we're going to work with and who we're not going to work with.
You were in the bid room. Like I remember you looking at me going, I got 3 people I can put in. I think I might make you one of them, Dad. I'm like, no way, man.
I'm making war room calls and going, no, you guys are out. I don't like the partnership there. You guys are in. I'm telling some of the guys, look, I'm not promising you that it's just you and us. Like I'm learning all of this on the fly.
Some of it you knew how to do by running franchises. Like at Caymans, you were an entrepreneur and running businesses, probably the number 2 guy, whether as an owner. So you knew how to deal with suppliers. You knew how to deal. Like some of this was bigger stakes.
Yeah, I knew business, and I had an idea of what to do, but I'm taking my instincts and I'm running a $20 million bid. Like that's.
I agree, and also successfully, right? It wasn't like good try, kid. Like you got to the final 4. You got 2 bids in the final 4.
And I had to make a lot of good decisions along the way too. I didn't make all good decisions, but getting myself to the finals of that probably is what kept my job. Yeah. Because I wasn't making any sales.
Right.
I was getting turned down left, right, and center. People are going, you're too far. Like
that's
cryptographic vulnerability assessment, too ahead of its time. Like,
it was.
Nobody's going to buy that right now.
And if you're out of the bids, why do they need a guy in Iowa?
So I get us to the finals and they go, okay, well, we wouldn't even had a chance. And you almost basically funded us for the next 10 years. So like, okay, we'll keep them around. And then they stop being able to pay my salary because funding dries up.
But by the way, that's what happened in my first 2 startups. It was either Karl, you close, we have 0 funding. So you go like find a customer or we're shutting down.
So then I get the option of, okay, either you can get deferred payments and maybe we'll try and pay you later, or we're getting partially bought out. We can have your contracts bought out by another company who's willing to pay you, but you have to shut down all the side business you're trying to do with your dad. And so at the time we're trying to run our own business of like basically consulting and seeing if people want to hire us as a double package.
Yeah.
And I'm going, fuck man, there's opportunities there. And I don't want to close those doors for $50,000 a year. I'd rather take the risk and be broke and see what happens And like, again, how many people make that decision? How many people go, okay, I might have no money. I might have to go move back in with my parents and use all my money on groceries.
Yeah, you were doubling down every time.
And be dead broke. And I'm going, yeah, I'm going to risk that. I'm going to go with that one and hope something better comes out of it. Because it sounds like I'm making traction now, right? I'm starting to believe myself more and more and more. I'm like, no, I can do this. And I can convince people that I can do this.
You also, like Galbraith and Associates, you hanging off of me, would have been a niche business, right? You would have been a sales recruiter.
There's no guarantee of any money. So then I turned that down. And I stopped getting paid for 3 months, and I was already behind payments. They already owed me money from 2 months back.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, so I go another 2 or 3 months of not getting paid, I'm broker than I was at the source, making $35,000 a year, going, please, something's going to pop here. I got to hit it.
I forget how this movie ends. Yeah, I forgot about that.
And then I get poached. I think, again, maybe through you, someone asked you, what do you have a sales guy? And you go, yeah, actually, I do.
You can't have him.
Yeah. And so I get poached there, and then I move into the position where I'm working now at a reseller.
That's the second time, where they want to hire me and I'm busy. and I go, my sales guy's Brad. Like, he does sales and I do all the fulfillment. They go, can we talk to Brad? I'm like, I thought you wanted to talk to me.
Yeah. So then I get hired at a reseller, and now we're really talking. But at least now there's a hierarchy, right? I have a mentor in front of me. I have a guy that's going to push me to, okay. Now, also, I have a patch now. I have existing clients in the government I'm selling to with sales already running. So I have people to talk to where I can sort of manage existing sales. I don't have to just look new business. I am still hunting, but I don't have to just look new business.
Yeah. Plus, your patch is my patch too. Like I'm doing consulting.
Right.
You're doing sales, but we're aiming for the same patch.
And I'm on trial period again, right? My contract says 3-month trial, and if you're not good enough, we're getting rid of you.
Forgot about
so I'm back to trial, and to be fair, actually going back, I wasn't given a patch at the beginning. I was biz dev hunt.
Yeah.
And go show us that you're worth keeping.
Yeah.
Like, show us that there's value in holding you.
Bring back a wildebeest.
Yeah. Show us that you can enter into accounts and you can prove value. So then I'm working my ass off again. And I'm not working in office with everyone else. I'm working from home. So I'm trying to figure shit out as I go still.
I wouldn't say they were helpful, but you weren't like in an office getting direction.
No, and then I do a good enough job that within the first 9 months they hire me in full-time account management. So I'm taking risk. I'm on trial, and I'm learning as I go until I finally land an account management position. Now I'm still getting told, if you don't reach quota, like, you're gone again, right? So, but at least now I'm in a more traditional position. I have a mentor in front of me. Now I have patch. Now I have customers. It's at least a little bit easier. I can mellow down a little bit.
You also know you've got enough of a track record in cyber because you've switched in between things. Like the crypto stuff was more identity. Now you're into
now I'm getting background. I've got some specialties, right?
Yeah.
I know vulnerability assessments now. I'm learning firewalls. I'm now also being given the free training with all our partners. So I'm going in the portals, and I'm getting network security expert training. I'm getting firewall. I'm getting cloud security. I'm getting the NetScout stuff. Like, I'm learning as much as I can, so that I go, if I don't make it through here, at least I'm going to use all these courses.
That's a funny observation. Is like everyone tells you in sales to build your sales Rolodex, like who are the cyber people you know, and it can't just be your dad's people, which you've done. But there's also like what's your product Rolodex, right? Like, what can you sell? What do you know?
Well, and especially being someone new, I'm going, I need to, just like you when you were going to be a consultant, I need to build my cred quickly.
Yeah.
Because if I get let go of here.
Yeah. and you don't, it's like one trick pony problem, right? If my first 3-month gig was CRA, that's what you can do.
Yeah. You better prove yourself that you can do more.
And if you're out of CRA, what are you going to do now? Well, you got to start from scratch. So so some doors were opened and whatever, and I've proved myself and I'm gone along the way through. Also, don't forget, I've made more money every year from 2019 to 2024. Every single year, I made more and more and more and more money, not just from contracts, but also from sales. Like once I land into an account management position for the last 3 years, based on similar salaries, I'm growing my commission year after year after year after year. I'm getting more and more and more sales. So yeah, I mean, it'll like my jobs, there's a consolidation period, right? You get promoted to a director then you're going to be a director for a while.
Sure.
Same with you in sales. I think you get to this account management level and there's kind of an expected.
You can plateau if you don't. And
Yeah.
this is sort of my point, is that like I could have laid back a few times and I would have been 7 steps behind.
Absolutely.
Right? Like I'm only where I am now because I grinded.
I think you grinded. I also think you doubled down. Like you said, your willingness to go, I'll go 3 and out again.
Yeah, I'll go. Like I'm basically going, I just want a big hand. Let's shove it back.
Yeah.
I'll put it all down on black again and see what happens.
Yeah. And I think
it would have been easy to rest on my laurels and go, you know what? I'm in cyber. I'm making 50. Last year I was making 35K. I'm making 50K a year, and someone's gonna pay my check. Let me just take it. Let me just take the safe route. I'll take 50K.
Well, and they give a bunch of times you were given a safe route. You could have tried to stay with me, and we'd have this niche business, like I said, where you're essentially a sales recruiter, but the salaries there are limited, and we all agreed that I can only work so hard and make so much money, and you make a cut of it. It's bound. There's a boundary.
Right.
And the same with when ISG gave you a soft landing. I thought it was a good deal. Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you were going to go work for a fairly retail IT.
Yeah, I was going to go back to,
And no matter how good you were there, it was a bigger source, right? It wasn't going to, with no upside, like other than transferring out, no upside.
Well, and with all that being said, my point is just that, like, when people ask me, how do you get into cyber? I go, well, how good are you? Like,
right.
There's some ways to get into cyber, but at the end of the day, like a lot of other industries, it's find opportunities, pitch yourself until someone gives you a shot. And then once you get the shot, now I've got some advice for you. Like, build your Rolodex and and take courses, like take as many courses as you can. And
you can't do any of that if you don't have the gig.
Well, you have to sell yourself in first, right? And like, okay, you can go take cyber courses and you can go take IT courses. But usually when people ask me, how do I get into cyber? They're not asking me, what school course do you recommend?
Yeah.
They're asking me, like, how did you fast track yourself?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I don't know if you want to do the same route that I went.
That's a good. So when I talk to people that ask me that are moving up now, and a lot of them go, hey, I went from 0 to CISO in 4 years, Karl. I went, exactly. Like, you're asking me what the path is. And to your point is, he tries to talk about weaving his career all the way back to Norton. Goes, there was that time in the corner when I was hacking. It's like, that wasn't why you hacked. You had there's no thread forward. You can look back in hindsight, like Job says, and see how all the pieces connected to here, but you can't see that connection forward. And so I didn't really start getting into it till I was 55.
Well, and I think one of the similar things that happened for both of our careers is, A, how willing are you to take risks?
Right.
Right. And B, how willing are you to learn the new edge stuff that nobody knows? Right. Because that's what's going to be valuable in cyber.
Yeah.
Like,
what's next?
Instance, Insider Threat was coming up, right? And you went and dove into there, and now you're a valuable asset because you're the Insider Threat guy.
Like trying to be a SIM guy wouldn't have made sense.
Sucks. That sucks at the beginning. Nobody wants to be the guy that nobody's talking about Insider Threat yet.
Or you could be wrong. Like I could be going, am I chasing the right direction? Like,
my point is more like, if you want to go to school, learn the foundation, and then do that thing for the next 20 years, it's not cyber, right?
Right.
Like you better be willing to learn new stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And like, if you're going to rest on your laurels and go, I'm the firewall guy, where do you think firewalls are going to be in 15 years? They're not going to be where they are now.
If you don't, and that was the game in Nortel, was, you're right. Write some code, get funded, get a team, sit on it as a manager and go, that's me, man. That's my patch.
Right.
And write it. And people would go, why are you switching around all the time? I go, one, I'm bored. Two, that idea of being lord of a domain you've already built it, now you're maintaining it, that sounds like boring as hell. And someday it's going to change.
Well, that's why I love cyber the most, is because like it doesn't get boring, because you're constantly on your toes. You constantly need to learn new things. There's constantly someone who knows something a lot better than you because they're the expert in that specific niche. So if you're not someone who wants to keep learning, like if learning sounds like, oh my God, man, I gotta learn a whole
like
new thing again, like dude, I can't do that. It's not your field.
It's an interesting point, right? Because everyone would, like, on a list of self-help books, continuous learning. It's a thing, right? And you go, yeah. It's like, no, it's a gotta.
But it's not just it's not just like, you got to continuously learn. But do you want to? Because if you don't, the job's gonna suck really fast.
Exactly.
And you're gonna become a dinosaur in cyber so quickly.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if you were whatever the expert in 10 years ago, today you're completely useless if you didn't keep progressing.
You also get owned. Like that's my view of the people that said I'm an awesome CISO and my bank will never get hacked. That's the last thing you say, because then all the hackers go, oh yeah,
right?
Because hackers see it, they see it as like a UFC competition. They see CISOs as good guys and them as bad guys, but they see it as a game. And so if you go, I'm a super awesome CISO and I built a 2.5 maturity model, whatever, they go, oh yeah, then we're going to come after you.
Right.
So you get humbled really quick, both in terms of thinking you're really good, like in terms of cyber maturity. But to your point, if you think you're a SME or you invented UEBA, I can still ride that because the next thing was AI and look at me. But I knew when we did that to SIM and started saying SIM's a dinosaur, someone's going to say already there's someone looking at me and UEBA going, that's I know a better way to do that. Generative AI, that guy's a dinosaur, man.
Well, and imagine if you just stuck with what you knew of insider threat when you started it. How useful are you today in insider threat? Like the technology's just advanced too far.
That's an interesting point for two reasons. Number one is I still think of myself as an insider threat guy when people ask me about like, why are you doing a roadmap this way? Like why? And I go, my bias is I think the bad guys are insider threat. That's what you're right. That's where I'm aiming.
Right.
All my stuff. And if you tell me that thesis is wrong, you don't care about insider threat, I got to pivot. I'm not your guy. But to your point, I think like that's always my theme or my claim to fame, or catch bad guys with math. That's a Karl thing, and it still tracks to why someone would bring me in.
Right.
But I also realize that person, if I'm trying to shadow them, like I'm trying to be them, not like, serial killer versus police detective, but you got to channel the insider threat guy and go, well, he knows about UEBA and he knows about me, so he's changed. Right. He's morphed. If he's still a good insider threat guy, he's either been caught or given up.
Right.
Or he's figured out, well, okay, there's a new game in town and there's all this UEBA and whatever, but how am I going to beat that?
Yeah.
And so that's almost like...
Well, that's the other thing too, Ray, is from being the good guys, you never want to say this, but the bad guys are usually better than the good guys, right? Like if you're
faster, yeah.
If you're that good, you can probably find the holes and exploit them better. I mean, granted, there's some people that don't want to be criminal, but the point is the guys that are really good at hacking hack. They don't defend.
It's a funny... Doug had a quote that, well, all your track and trace stuff, it catches the stupid thieves because you're learning what their technique was and how to catch them, and then they do it again. Yeah, you catch the stupid ones that do it again and go, oh, the last time when you did stuff and got away with it, I figured out what you did and I caught you this time.
Well, that's my point.
The smart guys go, I'm not doing what I did last time.
And that's my point on sticking with what you know in cyber, right? Well, somebody's learning how to beat that.
Yeah.
So if you don't learn the next steps, you become useless.
We used to say, as soon as UEBA becomes like monetized and it gets published, it's like sandboxes.
Right.
It's like, well, when I go break into a company, I'm going to look for sandboxes because I know what sandboxes are.
Right.
And so sandboxes aren't a thing anymore. They when they were new and I didn't know what a sandbox was and you were detonating my 0-day stuff, I didn't know you were doing it. But now that I know that you're doing it, sandboxes aren't a good trick because I'll flick it aside.
Right.
It's kind of like house alarms, right? Well, like when the guy's breaking into your house, if he's smart, he goes, I wanted to break into your house and I know you got an alarm, so I'm going to snip it, or I'm
going to find a way to turn the alarm
off. It's
off.
not a deterrent, or I wouldn't come here.
Right.
And so you go, well, I still need them just because it takes that extra second, but I need something new that's better than a fire alarm. By definition, if there's a known fix, the bad guys have known how to get around it.
Right. So what do you think the next big tool is in cyber? Like everyone's talking about AI. I think AI is being more commercialized now, but what is the next big tool in stopping cyber? Like I know, is it zero trust? Is there a certain tool? Like, is it the SIM stuff that's going on? What do you think the next?
Yeah. So I think you're right. Like definitely zero trust. And that it's a journey.
Do you want to maybe explain what zero trust is? Like the theory of zero trust?
I had to answer this at Google in an interview. And I think what I said is at a working level, non-cyber, you want to get your workforce and your workplace. And by workplace, I mean devices and geography. By workforce, I mean users. separated from your workload. And workload is applications and data. So you want to segregate those two things, period. That's zero trust. And
how do you implement it?
And how you implement it, to me, it's all about policy enforcement. So it's saying, I don't think any of these people have any history. These applications and this data doesn't know that you're in yesterday and it's your files. And these users log in on these devices in this hotel, and you start from zero. And then you start to build trust across the corporate system by identifying who you are and your password.
Yeah. How does authentication work in that sense?
Well, I think it goes into something like Active Directory and has a bunch of proven users that hopefully have a lot of integrity around inventory. And you have policies that get enforced in real time at the edge.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, the sort of idea is that zero trust, meaning you're never fully authenticated every step of the way. You have to re-authenticate who you are.
Yeah, and so exactly. So maybe I log in and say, here's my ID and here's my password and my MFA. That's a starting point to go, okay, you're in conditionally.
Right.
And I'm going to keep watching you. And over time, just because you go away from your computer or just like depending on what you do, I might improve your trust or degrade your trust.
Right.
But it's conditional. I would call it, there's better words for it in identity, but when it's fine grained, like you're not all in. You asked for a session on salesforce.com with 5 files. I go, okay, permission granted. You passed all the audits and the checks, and those are I looked up your policy entitlements, and you can have those. It doesn't get you anywhere else. As soon as you say, I want to go see my email, I go, let's start again on these policies and entitlements.
And so is that the next big step to securing the perimeter? Like, or the inside is zero trust as a policy?
Yeah.
What's next, or what do you think comes after that?
So I think, and the word is now adaptive. It's adaptive. So how much trust you have adapts through your session.
Right.
Depending on how you're behaving, depending on where you are, depending on what you're doing, I'm going to raise or lower your trust. And we start again tomorrow every session.
Right.
So I think that's the future infrastructure that's being paved. And that's a paradigm shift from defense in depth and blah, blah, blah. And that was all about solving insider threat and privilege escalation. That if you have this ordained trust, you can take advantage of it.
Right.
So we're going to solve that problem. AI, generative AI especially coming, it's a paradigm shift everywhere. Okay, so the good news is it's going to make being a SOC person and all the toil and looking for needles in the haystack a lot easier.
Right.
We can outsource a lot of the toil. Bad guys are going to use it for deep fakes and all those other things. So it's going to change the game. But I think that's just the threats and the vulnerabilities and the assets under attack are going to, the game's going to change a bit, but the players aren't and the actors aren't. I think the two things I think I'm going to get asked to do by clients and where the puck's going to do the Gretzky thing. One, consolidation. There's just too much surface area and too many products that are best of breed. So there's firewalls and there's
I keep hearing a lot in vendor talks, single pane of glass, right?
Right. So if you think of the Nirvanas, it's these SOC people, there's not enough of them and they have SOC fatigue and we can't hire people in cyber fast enough. So then make it simpler, right? We're not going to get better people and more people. So then you got to consolidate. More efficient. So that's the AI and the toil. I can't have discrete products all over the place that need someone with a PhD to look at and assess. And I need to pool everything. And it needs to go from shop floor to top floor, right? So, okay, I can't have 17 monitors and a guy doing swivelware looking between to try and find a bad guy. But same with the CISO goes, where's my risk posture? I need it all on a CISO dashboard, which is a single pane of glass in exec speak.
Right.
So there's that consolidate and integrate.
So is that just improving the SIM and the SOC?
Yeah, I think SOAR, if you had to put a buzzword on it, it'd be a SOAR project.
Which is?
Oh boy. Security, orchestration, automation, response. But it's basically automating all your back-end SOC.
Right.
And that leads people to also go, well, don't stop there. Start integrating with your ITSM. So all your trouble tickets, your network performance stuff, patches and vulnerability scans. If I can integrate all that and present kind of a consolidated risk score, like what are yes, you've got lots of threats and yes, you got lots of risk, but let's top 10 it. Like what's the most important thing I should fix tomorrow? I can't do it all. So that ability to get a lot more, to your point, efficient at the board level, not just the operational level. That whatever you want to call that, I call it consolidation, and using fabrics, like not necessarily one vendor, but fewer vendors.
So that's the next big, how do we protect?
I think that's 1 to 2 years, right? That's just a technical step. If you want to know where I think the money is going in, like what are venture capital people investing in, who's coming up with innovation that's going to change cyber, and what should a CISO invest in, I'm going to go external attack vectors. So outside in. Like if I'm insider threat guy, I'm doing all that AI on internal behaviors and tracking what people are doing. The second thing I want to do is, what are the hackers doing? And you kind of see it now with cyber threat intelligence.
Well, that was going to be my next question.
Go.
So that's what you would view as the next big protection.
Yeah.
What's the next big risk? Like, what are the big holes you see coming? And I think one of the big ones currently is the social engineering stuff, right? So the MGM hack and the Caesar's Palace hack were both by a group called Scattered Spider.
Okay.
And what they did was, so I think it was Caesar's that paid the ransom and MGM did not.
Yeah.
And what they did was, they looked up the archive of who was working at the places. They found the database of the emails of who was and where, and they found weakest chain of command. And what they did was they looked up the people's information that were working lower levels, and they SIM swapped. So they went to the telco communities, the telco communication places. They managed to convince them via SIM swapping to make that person's phone number their phone number on the SIM they had, right? You understand how SIM swapping works. Yeah. And then what they did was, because everyone has multi-factor authentication now, they would text into the company's directory saying, hey, this is whoever with the phone number. I can't get into my email. Can you send me the code to get into my email? And the multi-factor authentication would go text message to them. So they would take the link from there, and then they'd be able to gain access to the files, and then they would put ransomware in there, right? So and then obviously you get a ransom from from what's put in there.
So SIM swap and then request your MFA.
SIM swap, request MFA, and then with access, put all the viruses into the computers, right?
Right.
And so that, to me, currently, that's one of the big red flags is, how do you make the telco community companies more secure? They're not going to be. So that's a big weak link in the chain of command. So based off that, what's the next hole? Like, where do you see hackers going, I'm going to exploit that? That doesn't look very secure based on what the current security stacks look like.
I think, like, when I look at ransomware just statistically, and you write about weakest link, and it's more a network view, there's certain default ports that inevitably are open, and RDP and really old Windows CVEs. So like you go, basically you to your point about weakest link, either
like old software on computers
or unmanaged computers. So I just go, this is my outside, like the bad guys use Shodan and things like that to look at your network and go, show me network devices associated with that company that don't appear to be inside the firewall, that haven't
been used in a long time. Yeah, they forgot about them, but they're still connected to the network.
Or they're maybe supply chain, right? And they go, oh look, they've got their air conditioner maintenance guy. He's got access to their network,
right?
So I just go outside your network and look for these.
So you're talking like OT?
Yeah, OT or like I say, it's the air conditioner guy came in, he hooked up his computer to your network to debug your air conditioner system.
You gave him access.
And it was temporary, and you never. So I'm
gonna go in the AC guy's computer.
Yeah, or I'll look for CrowdStrike. I'll go look for evidence of endpoint protection, and go, these ones don't seem to have it. I don't know if they're forgotten computers or temporary ones, or like you say, unmanaged, like they're an OT thing. So I'm just looking for people, like you say, people in bars that are stupid. And whether that's a SIM swap or you're compromising them via social engineering into giving away their password, or unmanaged devices, or like I say, maybe old devices that have legacy software, Telnet, RDP. That's 80% of the initial compromise is a device like that. That's basically you got your shit together on 80% of your devices.
You forgot about some stuff that you weren't managing.
It's the ITSM, like your inventory. You don't have everything in there, and you missed something.
It's outside the security stack.
100%.
Right.
And so you kind of, what you just described in social engineering is what you would look for in devices is the weak link.
Right. And that answers my question. That's what I was looking for, is what do you think the weak link is? And I guess that's it. Okay. And my last sort of topic I wanted to hit was, I personally really thought that Russia was going to flex their muscles in the cyber programs they have when the Ukraine war started, and they really haven't. And there was some headlines around the next war is going to be a cyber war. Right. It's not going to be a... So what are the fears that China and Russia could be harboring? What kind of cyber threats do they have, theoretically?
Yeah.
And what makes them flex those muscles? Like, what poke would have to happen for them to go, we're gonna show you what's under the radar?
It's all speculative, of course. I would say we saw it a bit in the initial takeover of Crimea, where Ukraine, what used to be part of Russia, so their telco system was a Russian bot, and the Russians knew how to compromise it, so they could tap into all the Ukrainian soldiers' cell phones. So they a lot of things Ukraine's doing now with drones and targeting the generals. I think that's Starlink and our technology and our satellite superiority, saying we've got images, or we understand the Russian logistics. I think they did that initially, and were able to target Ukraine troop movement by their cell phones. And Ukraine smartened up. I think they probably bought different different technology from different NATO countries. But my point is that Russia probably has a fair amount of that. No, I would say especially the Baltics, where Russian technology was in use, they have an advantage there. Now, I think that Russia more works on compromat. So their idea is to get compromising photos, intelligence about you, and hold it, and then leverage you.
Okay.
So that's their forte is that. And their forte is hacking, right? They have hacker groups all over the place that'll come in, and they're just really good at hacking.
And so what about China?
Right.
There's been a few headlines over the last couple of years of, especially actually over the last 6 months, of some backdoors that people were not aware of, that the Chinese government were putting in technology made in China. I think there was a number of devices, I think there were firewalls too, that were implemented in the US government that turned out to have backdoors in them that the Chinese government turned on and were able to steal information off of. So my question is, is there more of that that's undiscovered? Do you think China's already got deep hooks in the States and Canada that we don't, that are hidden? And what makes them flare those out? Like what kind of threat would make them go, you know what, we're going to show our muscles?
I'll try and answer two parts there. Back to my compromat thing. China, as they say, plays the long game. I think they've been collecting intel on everybody in North America they can, with the idea of almost like quantum, like harvest and decrypt. Gather everything you can, just observe, put it all in a big honking database. Who knows whether Brad or Karl matters, but he might matter. He might matter at some point, and when he does, and they also have a cultural. Everyone here reports into the CCS, right?
Yeah, all the information that's
so if you're
used
a student
in China is pulled back to the government.
So if
nothing's secure.
You're over here as a foreign student, or you're working in North America as a Chinese expat, they still contact you and go, maybe not spy on people.
They're definitely harvesting all of
the
harvest,
like just come and tell us. Tell us about your neighbors.
Well, they're seeding information from all your stuff because they own everything. They own Huawei. They own all the telco.
And I think they do that down to the person. And so even if you're an expat from China, they contact you and go talk to this guy named Karl, become his friend, just tell me about him. I'm not saying you being a spy. I'm just saying we want information on this guy.
Added to that, how dangerous is TikTok?
I think it's huge dangerous. I think there's evidence that while Facebook and other social media platforms were derelict in their duty and having knowledgeable impact on teens, weight loss and suicide and whatever, and knew about it and kind of went, we want to still sell things, and so we're not going to necessarily act on this. China's doing it with intent.
Do you
They're
think
skewing. Their idea is, we've got a propaganda messenger to North America.
That's what I was going to ask you.
So let's skew like TikTok China versus TikTok North America are two different.
I've seen
animals,
the reports
right?
that they post much more educational content
Right?
in China versus they post ridiculous
Right.
stuff in your algorithms in TikTok North America. My question is, do you think they're purposely, is it deeper than just garbage content versus good content for kids to learn, or are they using psychological warfare on all of TikTok in North America? Like, are they pushing certain agendas to change people's viewpoints here?
I think so. I think the proof would be today's youth hates America, right? Like, America's quote unquote broken, and you can, there's no statistics economically or standard of living to demonstrate that. There's problems. There's social strife.
There's civil unrest for sure.
Yeah, but it's being stoked at a level that this generation of American children have incredible low self-esteem, and it's the greatest country in the world. Like whether or not you like it, by any measure, it's the best country in the world.
By a lot of metrics,
right?
yeah.
Like no one's emigrating to China, no one's emigrating to Russia, and yet they've successfully given us this low self-esteem in the West. And I think it's through social media, and they're happy to fund any kind of anarchist civil disobedience groups. Why? Well, because revolution from within. And we do that too, right? We would love to have an anti-Putin rally, and we like to say how, China is a totalitarian state and they are anti-democracy. So we would love to sow the seeds of democratic revolution, or whatever you want to call it. We would love to undermine their culture. They would love to undermine ours. They're being more successful at it.
And do you ever see a world where, I mean, I guess this is kind of diving a little bit outside of cyber, but I've always hypothesized that one day the U.S. is going to look too big and too strong, and China and Russia are just going to join forces because they're the three powerhouses, and the first one to join with the other is going to be the winning team.
Which is why Kissinger passes away at 100. Why is he famous? He was Secretary of State for, I don't even think 8 years. Like, involved in the government, but he went, we're having a Cold War with Russia. Whoever teams up with China, China and Russia were joined in the Communist Party. They started kissing up to China around trade and economics. And all of a sudden, it's not US and China ganging up on Russia, but Russia doesn't have China as an ally. If any of those two manage to become partners, they can overcome the other one.
And so from a cyber perspective, do you think there's a worry, like, are the states in Canada prepared enough via Five Eyes to fight a cyber war versus a China and Russia, or do you think that's scary?
I think it's scary because, like anything, the since the Second World War, the teams have been declared, and I think that's changing. And to your point of why isn't Russia using nuclear weapons or cyber? I don't think the Third World War will be a cyber war. I think cyber will be part of a war.
Right.
Now. And why isn't anyone using it is the same reason why they're not using biological weapons. It's because the U.S. has better weapons. And so if Russia were to do a legit critical infrastructure attack on the U.S., I think U.S.'s ability to do one on Russia is greater.
So they don't want to open that door unless their back's against the wall.
Yeah, exactly. And they know, like, both sides probably know what the other one's capable of doing because they've done little turn the lights on and off tests to go, see what we just did there? That was us.
Lots of spying and whatnot.
And I think China and the U.S., same thing. China can't afford to have the U.S. attack them with cyber attacks.
Right.
They've caught up and surpassed us in a lot of things, and they're gaining on us in quantum, but U.S. still is superior. And U.S. definitely has superior satellite like control of space. So that's the reason why no one's really pulling the trigger is fear of retaliation.
Everyone knows what's behind the other door.
Yeah. And so back to your question on is can Five Eyes meet the challenge? And my argument is they're the best so far. How tight those alliances are will be tested. How tight US is with NATO was challenged. I think you'll see Australia, New Zealand, okay, same cultural background, but they're major trading partners. If you look, it's Asia.
Right.
And look what's between, and they'll go, you're our favorite ally. They're our number one trade partner. Don't ask us to choose.
Right.
And so the other part is what about the rest of the world, right? Like we talk about the G8. I think it's going to go to G0, where there's going to be no necessarily dominant 8 countries that control, I don't know, 40% of the economy. Look what's between Australia and China. Is Indonesia, close to 1 billion people. Malaysia, you've got Brazil that's very quiet down in South America that kind of lets the United States be the Americas. You've got India. So this idea that China, Russia...
There's some players that can be involved that really aren't playing right now.
Exactly. Even Iran. You look at Iran and all the stands, you count the number of, the amount of surface area on the risk board and oil resources and population, and you go, it's a significant group of people. Japan and the G8 and Canada punch way above their weight. Mm-hmm. So what happens when all these other countries show up and get nuclear power and cyber power and industrial strength and economies and pick a team?
Yeah. Okay, well, I probably would like to end it there just because I think there's some other topics, but we could do probably an entire another episode if we go deeper into some of the other stuff. So I kind of want to save that for
once you get to the risk board, the show is over.
Well, yeah, I don't want to get too political either. But we'll do a follow-up episode that kind of dives more into the cyber, I don't want to say products, but some of the more cyber topics, just because I don't want this to be a 7-hour episode.
I wouldn't mind going like, yeah, what's next at a micro level? Like, what are these products and what do you mean by what's next?